Naumi chit pratibham devim param bhairavayoginim maturmana prameyam shashulam bhuja kritaspadam Naumi devim sharirastam nrityato bhairava krite pravirin megha ghanna vyoma vidyulekha vilasinim. Salutations to that goddess who is the flash of insight, whereby one recognizes themselves as pure awareness in all things as all things. She is ever united to her consort Bhairava, the void, and she is manifesting herself in each and every moment, immediately as the knower, knowing and known. I praise that goddess, the triplicity of goddesses, who abide in the lotuses mounted atop the tridents of my three nadis. I praise that goddess who is coiled in the base, Kundalini, who is the energy in the body of the dancing Bhairava. She is like a streak of lightning, at once terrifying, flashing across the cloudy monsoon season sky, but always playful and beautiful. May this be an offering to her. I'm going to chant the Patañjali Dhyana mantra now, just because that's what we talked about last time. So this is a visualization of Patañjali, who is the incarnation of Adisesha, Vishnu's serpent couch. Or rather the invocation of Patañjali. Yogena chitasya padena vacha malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopa karotamam pravaram muninam Patanjalim prajalirānatosmi abahu purushakaram shankachakrasi dharinam sahasra shirasam shvetam pranamami Patanjalim Hari Om. Yoga for the mind, grammar for speech, medicine for the impurities of the body. I bow to that great sage Patanjali, who has given all these three. Pure spirit, incarnate in form, holding the conch, discus and sword. I bow to Patanjali, that 1,000-headed white cobra. And here's the mantra for the Nāgas. The 9 Nāgas are invoked. It is a very powerful, very sacred mantra, and very good for today's Nāga Pañcamī. Anantam Vasukem Sesham Padmanabham cha Campbellam Shankaphalam Dhritarashtram cha Takshakam Kaliyam Tatha Etani Navanamani Naganam cha Mahatmanaha Sayangale Patin Nityam Pratakale Visheshataha Tasya Vishabhayam Nasti Sarvatra Vijayi Bhavet. Ananta, Vasuki, Shesha, Padmanabha and Kambala, Shankapala, Dhritarashtra and Takshaka and Kaliya, these are the 9 great serpents. I bow to them all. If this mantra is recited always, especially in the morning and in the evening, all poisons and fear will be destroyed and one becomes victorious everywhere. Om Nageshwaraya Namaha, Om Nageshwarye Namaha. Ganganapataye Namo Om Gurbhyo Namah Hari Om. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Salutations to all Nagas and Naginis. Salutations to Guru. Salutations to Ganesh. So today is Nāga Pañcamī. It's the 5th day of Shravana if you're following the Amanta calendar. So it's the 5th day waxing moon, and this is a sacred day, very special day, because today we honor the Nāgas, Naginis and whatnot. And they're very mysterious and very important aspect of the tantric world. And it's important to me because my grandfather on my mother's side, my maternal grandfather, his Ishta was Nageshwari, the goddess Amman, Bhagavati, Kali, but in the form of a serpent, Nagini. And it's interesting because there's a temple back where I'm from, and it's like in the jungles, the snake temple. These are quite popular in rural areas. And they let snakes roam freely in those temples. So like the appearance of a snake is very auspicious, naturally. And so the snakes will just loiter about, they'll coil in the gates. And if you see a particular serpent, a big black cobra, if you see it, it's considered to be very auspicious. So that temple is overrun with monkeys and serpents and scorpions and spiders, and nobody cares. They like that. And once when I was back home, I was going to bring my now ex-wife, but at that time we just got married, and I was going to bring her to the temple. And my mom was freaking out. She was like, oh no, what if she gets bitten by a snake? It's quite likely. I mean, like, there are a lot of snakes there, and they're quite well hidden, crouching in this bush and in that bush. And it's just a jungle temple. So my mom was necessarily quite concerned about going to that snake temple. But importantly, my maternal grandfather, he had gotten like some triple bypass or some double bypass surgery or something like that. And he was told by his doctors not to go to that temple. Because to access the Garbhagriha, the sanctum sanctorum, you have to climb up this very steep flight of stairs. And of course, post-surgery, like, the last thing you should be doing is exerting yourself and doing such cardio. But my grandfather, you know, being a Shakta, being devoted as he was to the Divine Mother, he was not the kind of person to be told what to do. In fact, if you told him what to do, what I've come to learn, both through my own experience and through hearing stories about him, is that he would often just do the opposite. For shits and giggles, for the sake of it. So he was told not to climb up these stairs. Unsurprisingly, that's the first thing he thought to do. So he went, climbed up the stairs, and he got a heart attack, like then and there, like a stroke or a heart attack or something, standing in front of that Nagama in the Sanctum Sanctorum. And recently I had gone back to that temple also, and I met the priest actually, who at that time was a young boy, who carried his lifeless body down to the hospital. And my grandmother got a call, and it was like, oh, you should come to the hospital. And nobody told her that my granddad had KO'd, that he died. So she only discovered it when she got to the hospital. And she never kind of forgave him for that, for like giving himself so fully to God, not only abandoning her in the marriage while he was off in the jungles doing sadhana, but abandoning her like in life, when he, against his doctor's wishes, climbed up the stairs and then and there, like, KO'd in front of the image of Ma. And I thought, what a blessing to be so devoted to a deity, and then to be in your final moments in front of the murti of that deity, and to breathe your last there, in your favorite temple in the middle of the jungle. Now, since then, there's been a lot of development in the area, so they've cut down all the trees around the temple, but because of the temple being there, they weren't able to cut down the trees at the temple itself. So it's kind of interesting, because all the wild animals, like the hornbills, there are even hornbills in that temple, which is interesting. All the birds, and all the snakes, and all the insects, all the monkeys, all the animals that used to be in the surrounding jungles, they've all flocked to the temple, because everything else has been cut down, and all these like fields have been made into paddy plantations, or actually palm tree plantations. So now it's even wilder. It's no longer in the middle of a jungle. It's in the middle of like agricultural area, but it's the last refuge of nature, the last refuge of wildness, and I would think left-hand path Tantra. And just that image is so poetic to me. The image of like this last snake temple with its ancient, almost tribal or shamanic autochthonous origins remaining intact, surrounded by urbanization, development, all of it in the name of like produce, commerce, trade, and money. Somehow, like a bulwark, somehow like a stronghold or a fortress, that temple still stands. And till today, one can go and see the goddess in the form of Nageshwari or Nagini. So there are some Nagas and Naginis here, necessarily. Some of you here in this room, I can see it on you, have got the blessing of the Naginis and Nagas, meaning there's like beings that are considered to be like astrally established in a plane called Naga Loka. And they appear in the Mahabharata, of course, they appear in the Bhagavata Purana. You hear about the Nagas and Naginis all throughout the Puranic transmission. So from like 1000 BC to 600 BCE, like all the Puranas, usually each and every one will have like an episode or two about the Nagas and Naginis. Like in the Krishna Leela, there's an important Naga named Kaliya, and Krishna subdues this Naga, like they're playing ball or something. The other day I showed someone my letterboxd, and she looked at it and she was like, "You know ball." And I'm like, what does that mean? You call me a baller? What does it mean to know ball? She was from Berlin, and she was like, it means you know movies. And I was so happy. I'm like, yes, European art critic, European film enthusiast, thinks I know ball. Yes, that's what I'm living for. That's the validation that I needed. So yeah, like they were playing ball. Krishna knows ball. And they were playing ball, and the ball fell into the river. And there's this like fierce dragon there, a serpent. And they weren't able to get the ball. So Krishna, as a young boy, goes to try to get the ball, and then he gets into a duel with the Naga, and he dances on the head of the Naga, subduing the Naga. Then the Naga's wife or wives come, and they're like, leave him alone, like he's our husband, we love him, he's like a noble and sincere person, don't kill him. And Krishna receives the prayers of the Naga's consorts, and then like leaves the Naga alone. But the Naga was blessed to have the feet of the Lord dancing upon his head. So we when we think about Nagas, we're typically thinking about the Bhagavata Purana, we're thinking of Kaliya and Kaliya's consorts, and that whole episode with Krishna and the ball, and Krishna dancing on Kaliya's head. And I have a Ganesh here. I like him very much because he's playing a veena, or some kind of stringed instrument, and he's standing on one foot in this Nataraja kind of posture, playing his instrument. So it's kind of like a Shiva Nataraja cross with Ganesh, cross with Krishna, because he's standing on a serpent. In fact, maybe I'll show you. This is one of my favorite Ganeshas that my Nepali friend gave me. So you can see here's the Naga, and the Naga has 5 heads. And so here's Ganesh dancing on the Naga, playing his veena of sorts. And this is a very Indonesian style. It's from Bali, from Indonesia. I know Queen Pawatri Ji was there also. And so in Bali, you get a lot of like Hindu hybrid images where the Balinese have preserved like this tantric heritage, but they're very esemplastic in their presentation. So you'll see like Nataraja coded Ganeshas, and this Ganesh is Nataraja and Krishna as well as Ganesh. And he's got a Saraswati element to him too because he's playing the veena. So instead of like the Damaru that Shiva is beating, he's playing a veena. And he's holding the tail of the serpent, which is interesting. He's holding the tail and he's dancing on the head. So this is clearly from the Bhagavata Purana. And so often when we talk about Nagas, Om Ganesh, the Naga par excellence, the Naga that comes to mind, maybe the one that is most popular is Kaliya, the Naga Kaliya. And the name is special too, no? Kaliya, like Kali Yuga, Kali, Kaliya. So that's the Naga, I think, that has most Puranic fame. But when you look at the Mahabharata, there, the young boys, the Pandavas, they're also kind of associated to the Nagas because Duryodhana, when they were all young, like hatched a plan to like get them drowned or something. So they drowned all the 5 Pandavas, and once they were immersed in the water, the Nagas came to rescue them. So the Nagas, like when you see with Kaliya or when you see with these Mahabharata type Nagas, they're almost always underwater. That's a beautiful thing about Nagas. They're like in the subconscious mind. They're buried deep in the psyche. And the best metaphor for the subconscious is an ocean or is a body of water or something. And so when we think of the crocodile, Makara, he's a reptile. You know the crocodile? So Makara is said to lurk in the Sadhisthana chakra. He's like the dark Sobek or something like that. Like a dark kind of reptilian entity that lurks in the very depths of the human psyche and is responsible for our reptilian instinct of fight and flight, to mate and to eat. So some of the darker, more primal impulses are related to Makara. So when you look at Ganga, the goddess Ganga, when she's depicted iconographically, she typically is very Gayatri coded. Because Gayatri, as you know, is not a goddess who is typically depicted. Gayatri comes from a period of Indian culture where even Ganesh is not depicted. Like when you think of Ganesh, you don't think of him as an elephant-headed, like, pudgy boy who holds sweets and who plays the veena and who is the patron of all artists and musicians and sages and intellects. Like Ganesh is a pure energetic presence. And in the Yajurveda, we invoke him in the following way. Om Ganana Antva Ganapatigum Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jeshta Rajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspatana Shrinvannu Tebisi Dasadanam. Nowhere in that is elephants mentioned. There's no elephant head. There's no like iconographic depiction of Ganesh at all. Instead, he's called the one who rules over violent forces. Ganana Antva Ganapatim Gum Havamahe. He is the one who is the poet among all poets, the foremost poet. Kavim Kavinam. But importantly, the word Kavi, poet, also has the connotation of rishi. A rishi, a sage, a muni, a rishi. They are poets actually, because there's nothing that a person of God wants to do more than express God. And when you're expressing God, who is the supreme poet, whose poetry is his entire universe, naturally your expression will be poetic. In the Malini Vijaya Uttara Tantra, it says that a person who is liberated will always be able to, in each and every moment, compose enchanting, articulate, and eloquent poetry about the absolute nature of reality. They're able to spontaneously express this. So spontaneity and expression is one of the traits that in the tantric world we see being emphasized a lot when it comes to liberation. You cannot know God and not be creative, and not be expressive, and not be poetic. Because God is the poet creatrix par excellence. So how can one know God and become mute? Is God mute? This is silence? Look at the music of God, the poetry of God. It blazes forth in every sunset. It blazes forth as all these bushes of flowers, the fragrance of the earth, the fragrance of the soil, the sights and sounds, and the feeling, the texture of life. It's maximal. One might almost say that God is in her Baroque phase or something, because she's maximally poetic, in each and every moment diversifying. It's like she cannot confine herself to a haiku. She's just like, here she is in each and every moment. The bugs, there are no end to how many species of bugs there are. In the insect kingdom alone, scientists discover millions of new species, not millions of new bugs, millions of new species every single day. The diversity and plurality of this magical display of Maya is unfathomable. So God is infinitely creative. She creates almost by
fact of her own nature, she can't help but pour forth expression after expression after expression. So how then, one who knows God, how can that person ever be mute? And if they are mute, still they will express themselves. You'll still see, like in the case of Ramana Maharshi, an entire village forming around him, a village that becomes a city with its own universities and airports. Like an entire community forms around the mute sage. So even if the sage doesn't speak, their expression is still unimpeded. So in the Malini Vijay Avtara, you see clearly that a liberated person should be able to spontaneously, at any moment, express, articulate, enchanting. I think the word they use there is manohara, enchanting and beautiful poetry about anything, but especially about the absolute nature of reality, suffused as they are with absolute nature of reality. Abhinavagupta says, may my heart spurt forth the 6,000 or so verses of the Tantra Loka. My heart, which is fused from the commingling of the emission of my mother and father, Shiva and Shakti, in the bliss of sexual union. Because that union was in bliss, the heart that is fused and formed from the commingling of that fluid, that heart must also be filled with bliss. He says it's filled with the anutaratrika, filled with the anutaramrita, he uses that word, filled with the nectar of the unsurpassable, or anutara, that which is the highest, having nothing higher than it. My heart is nectarian. It is suffused with the nectar-like bliss of that which nothing higher can be. That's Abhinavagupta's opening verse. Vimala Kalashraya Abhinavagupta Jananim. My mom is Shakti, my father is Shiva, and their sexual union and the bliss of that union has produced this heart. May this heart, spurata, surge forth in this orgasmic display of poetic eloquence. So when we look at Ganesh, of course it makes sense for him to be the Kavi of Kavis. Kavi, Kavinam, Upamashavastamam. Then he's called Jeshta, like the astrological sign Jeshta, the eldest. Here, Ganesh is the eldest. He's being attributed to Jyotish. He's being called like the foremost of sages. So he's elder brother, or like the wise man, or like the patriarch or something. So Ganesh is the eldest. Not just like a child, a playful, rambunctious boy who's born of Shiva and Shakti. He is now, in this case, Brahman. He's the foremost Brahmana. Brahmanaspata ana shinvanuti viseda sadham. So nowhere is there a mention of an elephant's head or like any kind of iconographical depiction. It's just pure energy. And the energy of Ganesh is synonymous with the Yajurveda hymn we just chanted. So that's why getting the pronunciation right and getting the intonation right is so important. Ganana antva ganapate gom havamahe kavim kavinam upamashravastamam. The rhythm of that, the melody of that, and the pronunciation of the Sanskrit bijas in that, that is synonymous, as you know, having studied Tantra for some time now, that is synonymous with that energy and that presence that we call Ganesh. So it's not important actually to visualize deities as a stula sharira or as a vigraha. It's just important to feel their living presence. That's why if you have a fantasia or something and like you're not visualizing imagistically, that's perfectly fine. That's just a step. It's a stepping ladder, as it were, and the deepest and most sincere expression of the deity is in the energetic sense of the deity within and the appearance of the deity without. So when you're chanting a mantra, yeah, you can chant the Bala Tripura Sundari mantra, but you can also see how you're becoming more playful, how you're recognizing how playful and chill the world really is. That's the important thing. Like when you're doing mantra japa, when you're chanting the mantra of a deity, most people fail at mantra japa because although they are mechanically repeating the name of the deity, they are not practicing with bhavana or with mudra. We say you must practice with mudra. And here mudra doesn't mean some aphrodisiacal parched grain. It doesn't mean drugs or something. Of course, those can aid the mudra. But the mudra in question, when you're chanting the name of a deity, is who that deity is, what that deity represents, and to what extent you can embody and imbibe that bhava, that mood, or that flavor. That's why people can be very like superstitious and scared when it comes to Bhairava mantras and Kali mantras. Because the kind of being that Kali is, or the kind of representation of divinity that Kali is often quite scary. In that a person who chants Kali mantras or Bhairava mantras becomes unapologetically sovereign. Isha samstepya nishe. They become lord over all, having no lord over themselves. And they stop caring about things that other people care about a lot. Like they stop caring about material prosperity. And they will never trade their time and energy and their free will in order to like get some kind of material benefit. When material benefit comes, they'll never reject it, but nor will they ever slave themselves over to some corporation or to some boss in order to get material benefit. And so they become kind of defiant in that way. So parents fail to understand their kids. Society fears those people who start worshipping Kali and Bhairava. So this is the Indian practicality, like a deep understanding that India has regarding mantras. It's no joke. When you chant a mantra again and again and again, if you're successful, you bring the energy of that deity into your heart. And once it appears in your heart, it takes over your whole being. In the more antiquated way of saying this, it's a possession. One is possessed by the deity who they're trying to possess. Possession works both ways. To possess Kali is to be possessed by Kali. And to be possessed by Kali is to, in some way, shape, or form, evil max. Because you just do what you want from the spontaneous freedom and sovereignty of your being, which Kali helps one recognize. So given that, when you chant Ganesha's Yajurveda mantra, you interact with the subtlest form of Ganesh, pure energetic presence. It's not even important at that point what he looks like, because you feel him. You have the mudra, you have the bhavana, the felt sense of Ganesh. It isn't until the Puranic period, 1000 BC to 600 BC by conservative, kind of secular Western academic standards, it isn't until then that you start fleshing out, literally, these deities with anthropomorphic or physical, or zooanthropomorphic in this case, features. So now Ganesh is a theriomorphic or zooanthropomorphic form with like a head and with like a certain kind of body, with arms, 4 arms typically, and the arms are holding like say an axe or like a sweet, a modakam. So it's not until later in Indian civilization that we start to conceive of energies as embodied and as physically like shaped. So with Gayatri, her mantra, you all know, many of you have been initiated into that mantra when you were like 9 years old or whatever, as part of your Brahmin heritage. Some of you maybe are not Brahmins, but in many parts of India, Vaishyas and Kshatriyas are also initiated into the Brahmana Gayatri mantra. That's enough. Gayatri does not need to be visualized as a woman. She is the pure Shakti of that mantra. And in the Sri Vidya tradition, when we chant Panchadashi or Shodashi, there's a lot of literature actually from like the 15th, 16th and 17th century, like say Lola Lakshmidhara first and then Bhaskara Raya later. These are authors who are Brahmanas, who are patronized by very wealthy kings, like in the Krishna Deva Raya Empire. They were all South Indian masters who did a lot to bring the tantric kind of shamanic world into the fold of Vedic urban civilization. So their work was mainly to show that what you have in the Vedas is non-different from what you have in the Tantras, and the Tantras are maybe a deeper, more esoteric, more powerful, more culturally appropriate, more Kali Yuga oriented presentation of the same Vidya that you got in the Vedas. So if you chant the Gayatri mantra, no problem. But what these masters, who are Sri Vidya Upasakas par excellence, what they have to say is that if you chant the Panchadashi and the Shodashi, you're chanting the secret Gayatri mantra. And then they'll do a lot of work to show you how the parts of the Panchadashi map on to the parts of the Gayatri. So they'll say like this Kuta maps to Om Bhurbhuva Swaha, and this second Kuta maps on to Tat Savitur Varenyam, and this next Kuta to Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. And then the Bija mantra is Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat. They'll show you mantrically how the geometry of the Panchadashi or the Shodashi is synonymous with the geometry, energetically speaking, psychically speaking, of the Gayatri mantra, which is very important, because if they didn't do that, if Shaiva Siddhanta didn't appear, if Bhaskara Raya and Lola Lakshmidhara didn't work so hard to show how Vedic tantric stuff was, maybe Tantra would never have been accepted by mainstream society because of its kind of heterodox, maybe non-urban or somewhat eccentric approach to reality. There's a freedom and a power to Tantra that can sometimes be an affront to ordered, civilized society. You should be able to do this with the mantra. By now you should say Agnimi Le Purohitam, and that should happen. So it's important to note then that the work of people like Sadyojyoti and like all these Shaiva Siddhanta masters is to make mainstream what would otherwise have been seen as incredibly taboo. And the reason it's seen as taboo, the reason it's seen as so eccentric and heterodox, is because it maximizes personal freedom. So coming back to Gayatri, that mantra exists within the urban Vedic like civilizational structure. There was no need until recently to depict Gayatri. But because of the tantricization of Vedic concepts, it became important. Just like you have a stula sharira of Lalita and of Kali, it was important then to have a stula, a physical form for Gayatri. But whenever you see Gayatri, she looks like maybe Saraswati in the Saumya aspect, but she's almost always sitting on a crocodile. For 2 reasons. One, because she's the Ganga. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean Ganga Mata. She's Ganga Mata. You'll see Gayatri and Ganga Mata, like the idea there is very similar. When you depict Gayatri Devi or when you depict Ganga Mata, it's just a goddess, very much like Saraswati or Lakshmi, with braided hair naturally because she's a civilizational influence. But importantly, especially with Ganga Mata, you'll see her sitting on a crocodile. That crocodile is in the Ganga, and when you're like bathing in the Ganga, you don't want to step on a crocodile or encounter a crocodile, because there are crocodiles in the Ganga. And so you get the blessing of Ganga Mata, who subdues crocodiles, to give you a safe swim and bath. But of course, on a deeper level, the Ganga represents, the flowing waters represent the mind itself. And within the mind, there are subconscious urges, there are predispositions that are, I guess you could say in a modern aspect, thank you Ma, associated to the reptilian brain maybe. You could say there's reptilian brain, and there's a mammalian brain, and then there's a prefrontal cortex, our humanness, which has to make sense of the fact that the human is like a coalition or commingling of the divine and of the animal. And so a lot of spiritual traditions, they're divine maxing and they're animal suppressing. So they want to suppress our animal nature in the name of a safe structured society, a civilizational project of quelling our bestial urges. And the deepest aspect of that civilizational project is the quest towards moksha. So when you look at Gayatri Devi, she represents both the civilizational tendency towards law, peace, order, and harmony, as well as the post-civilizational or true civilizational project towards spiritual liberation, which I was telling you on Thursday, didn't occur to the Indian mind until much later. At first, the Vedas were really only for civilizational structure and order and harmony, and more or less finding peace with nature so that we can get rain for our crops, so we can get animals in order to trade, and more importantly, so that we could all get along when we all have competing interests and competing desires. So that's the role of Gayatri and the role of Ganga Mata, to bring a sort of structure and a sort of civility to the otherwise bestial and animalistic mind. And the bestiality of the mind, the reptilian brain, is represented par excellence by this crocodile that lurks in the waters of the subconscious. It's there in the Ganga, it's there in the oceans, and so it's a sea monster. Makara, when you see him as a crocodile, you'll notice he's not just a river or freshwater animal. He's a bit like an ichthyosaurus. Somebody asked Sananchi, what's your favorite animal, sea creature or something? I was like, ichthyosaurus. That's really... I didn't know what that was. And then we Googled it. It's it's kind of crazy fucking thing. It's Google ichthyosaurus if you've never seen what that is. It's like a crazy fucking thing. It's like a swordfish, crocodile, shark thing. It's like a horrific, monstrous thing that dwells in the waters. And Joseph Conrad, in his Heart of Darkness, there he references the ichthyosaurus. So there was a fad in Victorian English writing where you would refer to the water and you would refer to this mythical legendary beast in the water, and you would just use the word ichthyosaurus, kind of a dinosaur. We know crocodiles and sharks, they're ancient. They were there with the dinosaurs and they're here now. So this is an ancient thing. It's deep in the subconscious, and you cannot be an animal or a human without being influenced to some extent by this underwater creature called Makara. So Makara, he's either a crocodile or a shark or some crocodile-shark hybrid. Yeah, and if you look at Jungian literature, you'll see that crocodiles are referenced sometimes as a symbol. So you don't even have to interact with Vedic civilization. You don't have to encounter any tantric imagery about the crocodile in the Swadhisthana chakra or anything like that. If you're intuitive and you're open to the messages that come through from the subconscious, a lot of times you will meet this being in the form of some reptilian creature, like a serpent or a crocodile, or even some kind of fish-like creature like a shark. Usually it's a fish and a crocodile combined. So in the Egyptian tradition, I think his name is Sobek. Do you know? If you look at the Goetic book, the Lesser Key of Solomon, where all the names of demons are listed, one of the fiercest, most terrifying of the demons, of course it's not polite to say their names out loud, but his form is with a crocodile head. And even Set sometimes is depicted in that way. There's a Sobek kind of Set crossover that you get. Set, of course, looks more like a jackal or like a wolf, kind of like Anubis meets Sobek. Set. And then I want to talk to you today about Apep or Apophis. Apophis is the Greek name, Apep is the Egyptian name, and even the name, it should trigger something in all of us. Apep. He's the dragon of chaos, and I want to talk to you about Tiamat. Today on Nāga Pañcamī, I want to talk about dragons, reptiles, the deep subconscious bestiality that one can either try to suppress or try to kill, but ideally ride. That's what Gayatri does. Gayatri or Ganga Mata does not kill the crocodile. You don't see her having vanquished the crocodile. Even Mikael, when he's standing on the head of the serpent with his spear, it's not Mikael decapitating the serpent. It's not Mikael having impaled the serpent. It's Mikael about to impale the serpent. The story doesn't end there. You assume that he was victorious, no? You have a frozen frame of Michael the archangel with his arch nemesis, the serpent, the dragon of chaos, and he looks like he's about to smite the dragon, and then the movie ends there on a cliffhanger. What actually happened next? Nobody really knows. Maybe the dragon escaped. If you look at Milton Paradise Lost, he wasn't killed, he was merely exiled, and he decided that it was better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. And he goes on to establish his kingdom of sovereignty here on earth and in the netherworlds. So like that, I want to take a comparative approach today, if you don't mind. I want to talk about Apep and Sobek in the Egyptian tradition and compare that to Set a little bit. I want to talk about the crocodile, Makara. You'll see why Makara is pretty much a Naga. But mainly I want to talk about Nagas. So when you see Makara, notice that it's not just the Indian civilization that's decided to depict chaos and the deep ancient bestial urge that like swims in the subconscious in this way of crocodile. You see it with the Egyptians, and you see it with Jung, who was neither Egyptian nor Indian, but particularly open to the intuitive images that would arise in his experiments. So he also saw it as a crocodile. And if you see a crocodile, I think it's pretty scary. You know, it's got a long mouth full of teeth, and it lurks underwater. Its realm is the water, not ours. We are not necessarily comfortable in the water, although we came from the water. And though it's been our origin, it's also been a long time since we've been back. And so when we go into the water, we feel particularly vulnerable. Everybody anybody anywhere who's been in a body of water, everybody who's gone into water feels the joy and thrill and beauty and familiarity of being in our natural habitat, but also a sense of, oh my God, this is not really my home. And there are beings who live here that are much more versed at moving about here, and they're under me. I know, we're made of water, and yet we feel ourselves to be people of the earth, and when we go into the water, we feel, out of our depth. And then we sense that underneath, unbeknownst to us, lurking in the shadows of the water, could be a threat, like a crocodile. And when the crocodile comes, it grabs you with such force, and it drags you under. That's the interesting thing about the crocodile. It doesn't kill you on land. It catches you on land and brings you into its realm. And in its realm, it shakes the fuck out of you until all of your bones are broken, and then it eats you. So the crocodile won't just eat you. It will destroy you first. It'll break all of your bones and turn you into a limber thing, just like Kali. Once Kali gets you in her jaws, my God, like a crocodile, she'll shake you this way and that until every bit of resistance in you, which is really you resisting yourself, until every single bit of resistance, every bone, every solid structure is pulverized into dust. You must be a jellyfish to worship Kali. And how beautiful are jellyfish? They live for thousands of years, floating in the ocean, pulsating with light. Boneless. You know, isn't it funny that people have spines but are so spineless? If you are floating down a stream and there are rocks in that stream, the worst thing you can do is get stressed and be afraid, because then you will harden your muscles and you will be tight, and then when you hit the stone at top speed, that's when you get injured. But the best thing you can do is just relax and let the force of the stream take you. And then when you are floating down in the force of the stream, even if you were to hit a rock, because you're so limber and light and surrendered and open to the experience, your bones won't break. So Kali is like this fast-moving stream where every single moment she senses that there's some hang-up or resistance in you, you'll collide with a rock. And you'll collide with rocks again and again and again until that which within you is hardened and solidified and ossified and fossilized, until that is destroyed completely and you're open again to the chaos and possibility of each and every moment. Only then, arguably, can you worship Kali, because only then can she play through you. Can you help me out? The fan is not a fan of me. So having said that, the Makara, symbol of the crocodile, is going to be very important for today's conversation. But I'm just going to make this point. In the Mahabharata, when we encounter the Nāgas for the first time, it's in the context of the Pandavas being drowned. Like their enemies, the Duryodhana crew, the 99 brothers of Duryodhana, they are jealous of the Pandavas, and so they hatch a plan to drown these brothers. And so they're drowned, but they don't die. And the reason they don't die is because they're saved by the Nāgas. Isn't that beautiful? So the Nāgas, in some stories, are problematic. They're like enemies. Like in the case of Krishna, it seems like God, in his avatar Krishna, subdues the Naga but doesn't kill him. Just like Ganga Mata or Gayatri Mata don't kill the crocodile. Just like in the tarot, the Pamela Coleman Smith deck depicts the lion as one's own bestiality. But here you can see that the eight of the major arcana, the eight, that is a goddess or an angel, not killing a tiger or a lion, but subduing the lion with gentle grace, with force of course, but with tact, more with finesse than with force. So she closes the mouth of the lion. That's strength. Strength is not a response to being afraid. Like most of the time we think of strength as reaction. Oh my god, a crocodile. Oh my god, a snake. Oh my god, a lion. And then we kill that thing. That's not strength. That's weakness. Parading as strength. That's fear. Our inability to understand something leads us to feel fear for it, which leads us to kill that thing because we just don't want to deal with it. That's what Mikael might be trying to do with the serpent. He's afraid of it actually, and he just doesn't want to deal with it. So he's trying to kill it rather than learn to ride it. Yes, much of this lecture will be like how to train your dragon, because that's a deep claim actually, that the dragon is this wild force that once trained and once befriended becomes your friend. And if you think of the Targaryens and the source of their power being dragons, like you can see that even in the case of Game of Thrones, like How to Train Your Dragon, like even like Aragon, you know, there was like a teen adult series of novels about a boy training a dragon. Like this dragon rider motif is very important. Beowulf makes a mistake. Beowulf kills the serpent, when in fact he could have befriended the serpent and rode the dragon. There is no knight who can get his princess representing his own anima or subconscious mind. There is no knight who can reclaim his princess without first encountering the dragon, because the anima, the princess, to use a Jungian term here, is in the fortress behind a moat. The moat, again, the symbol of the river or the lake or the body of water. And in that fortress or in that moat is a serpent. And until the serpent is quote unquote smote, one doesn't access the princess and attain that divine femininity. So you can see, like, even in the Grail quest, in the case of like alchemical medieval Europe, there's a quest for femininity. Maybe I'll start with that. The land is barren, the king is grumpy and despondent, and all because the princess has gone missing. And the princess, or the queen, is the king's consort, actually, but the knight usually wins her hand. So she falls in love with the knight, not the king. Now the knight is usually like a farmhand or a young boy who feels the call to adventure, so he accepts the king's quest to go and find the Holy Grail. Now the Holy Grail is obviously a symbol for femininity. It's a vessel that holds water. In fact, if you look at the Kaula text, they talk about the Goloka, or like they talk about the vessel. And the vessel is maybe a skull, it's maybe a cup, it's maybe a half of a coconut, but it contains wine, sura, or karana, or it contains like coconut milk or some kind of liquid. It is a symbol for the vulva, for the yogini vaktra, and a symbol for the womb, the garbha. So this vessel is filled with water, water being of course the symbol of emotion, sentimentality, but also the subconscious mind. So what's happened is the king is despondent because he's lost touch with his consort, with his anima, with his feeling, with his intuition, with his sentiment. As a result, the earth is barren. You'll see there's like no crops growing, everyone's sad. Basically what this is like what it's like at your office when you're sitting behind a desk crunching numbers for a job that you actually hate to support someone whose dream it is to build the company, but ultimately they're not even happy either. However much money they attempt to make, and even if they successfully make that money, it doesn't seem to actually grow any crops. There's no like tangible return on investment. And so everyone slaves away in this kingdom that is devoid of water. There's no rain. That's an important metaphor. Oh my fucking god, I think we're out of cigarettes. There's more on the table though. So, actually, do you have those zins?
Yes.
Have I earned one?
Yes.
She said to me, if you're good, then I'll give you a zin. I hope I've been like 50 minutes in, somewhat deserving of a zin. So, if you don't have rain, if all the, the lakes or all the rivers have dried up, obviously that's an important symbol. Life has lost its flavor, its sentiment, its intuition, its... This one. It's, what? Oh, you're gonna... Yeah, okay, good. So it's lost its zest. And so the king is despondent, the crops are failing, and so the young boy, who is not grown up to accept the fate that everyone else is consenting to, he answers the king's call, and he answers his own call to adventure. So then he goes on this hero's journey. He meets a wizard. The wizard takes him to the underworld. He meets temptresses. He meets terrifying demons, and he overcomes them all, usually through wit and through finesse, not necessarily through brute strength. So one of the key features of the hero's journey is that the hero must outsmart his foes. He cannot do it through force alone, because the foes are usually much stronger physically, and they're usually, thank you, Ma, much more ancient, and so they're usually fighting him in their home turf. So he's always playing an away game. You know, he's never playing on his home turf. He's left his home to go on this hero's journey, which takes him to like forests and lonely mountains. You know, in the medieval kind of swords and horses fantasy, every forest is haunted, every mountain is cursed, every fortress has a dark wizard. And in each of these places, he's not in his home turf. He's out of his depth. And so he cannot rely on home field advantage. He cannot rely on brute strength. The enemies are always stronger than him. He cannot rely on experience, because the enemies are ancient and far more versed in human nature than him. He's just a young boy who previously was a farmhand. You know, what does he know about swords and horses and fighting enemies? But because of the purity of his heart, the nobility of his purpose, because of his faith in himself and in his quest, he somehow, through miraculous, uncanny ways, overcomes. And each time, it's right when he's about to lose, when he fails, that's when he succeeds, if he doesn't lose heart. So the test is always like, okay, here's a monster who's older than you, who is in their home turf, who is more powerful than you in every way, shape, or form. Do you want to engage in the battle? And the correct, practical, reasonable thing to do would be to run away. To be like, no, I don't know this territory. I don't know this monster. I'm obviously ill-equipped to fight it. He has more experience. He has more brute strength. I'm not going to win this fight. So it's like David looking at Goliath. Or it's like a person who looks at their dreams and realizes that it's impractical and irresponsible. Now, everyone in your life will tell you this, that you cannot do your dream, that you cannot achieve the things you want, because look, the world is older than you. It has its laws that it understands better than you. You're new here. It's been here forever. What do you think you're going to achieve by trying to fight something on its home turf with less experience and with less strength? And yet, something about the human spirit refuses to back down. It refuses to say, okay, you're right. It refuses to give in to reason, to practicality. As Pascal said, you know, the heart has its reasons which reasons knows not. That's the beauty of the hero's journey. It's like an unlikely hero, an underdog, who somehow, despite all odds, because of the sincerity and purity of his quest, because of his faith in himself and his willingness to give everything up for the sake of something that he believes in, it's because of that he wins. Because that's the one thing that he has that his enemies don't. The enemies are strong, but they don't have faith. The enemies have experience, but they don't have sincerity of purpose. The enemies are on home field advantage, but that makes them arrogant and unable to be creative and see new solutions, which, you know, Zen mind, beginner's mind, which like fresh eyes, which a kind of childlike attitude opens up for you. So the hero sees something that the enemy does not, or the hero intuits something in the last moment, or what typically happens is grace. We were just watching Coraline the other day, and she tries her, because you know the movie's going to come out soon with the other mother, and I have to make sure all the people who are going to see that movie with me have at least watched Coraline. And I know some people in my life who are actually too young, because they're in their early 20s, to have seen Coraline the way we did. We saw Coraline when we were like 9 or 12 or something, and it really made an impression on us then. And Sananchi was like, how did you watch this when you were 12? How are you not traumatized? And I'm like, girl, I am traumatized. Look at me. This is what I do. I sit around surrounded by skulls worshipping some crazy woman. Like, obviously that woman, the other mother, did something to me. Even my mom was like, why don't you go ask your real mom with regards to Kali one time? The other mother won. Yeah, I let her sew on buttons for eyes. No, Kali takes off all the buttons, sadly. So, this is important. The reason the hero in the Campbellian hero's journey wins is because he's able to access creativity and novel solutions, but because he's open to his intuition. And one way that allows him to be open to his intuition is his childlike sincerity and faith. And so in Coraline, what happens is she does this quest. She's competing against some kind of dark seed or something, some fae, some fairy godmother who wants to trap her soul. And she's playing a game. And usually in the hero's journey, you'll see the enemies love riddles, they love games, things like that. So she's playing a game. She's entered a contract that's a losing contract, actually. And she managed to get 2 of the 3 balls. She has to go to memories. This is important. The way to get the balls in which the souls are trapped, she also knows ball, Coraline. And she has to go and get these balls from these scenes that she's visited before. So she has to kind of like reconcile or come to terms with her past selves and her past experiences. So she goes back to those places, sees them for what they are, and rather than feel afraid and rather than run away, she confronts them, and through some kind of intuitive, creative ability, she succeeds. But only up to a certain extent. Her self-effort can only take her so far. She gets 2 of the 3 balls, and then the moon is about to be darkened, and she realizes that she's lost. And she's like, oh my god, I failed. Having tried her best, and having acknowledged that her best was not enough, that surrender in that moment is what makes her open to grace. And then the cat, who is a very sacred symbol in that film, the cat who is an interstitial being that can go between worlds. That cat, sorry to spoil it for you, those who haven't seen Coraline, the cat catches the mouse, the last of the mice, and the final ball drops down in front of her by grace. So there's this like thing where like your creative, childlike openness to your intuition and your subconscious, coupled with some unseen element in the subconscious that suddenly in the last moment comes to help you, otherwise known as grace, that's what makes the hero successful. So the knight, or the young farmhand who becomes the knight, does triumph over the dragon, and as a result wins back the queen. But once you consider the myth of Tiamat in the Mesopotamian or Babylonian arc, you realize that the queen is the dragon. That's why Shrek is kind of important, because they don't kill the dragon. The donkey marries the dragon. That's actually very sophisticated. The donkey, which is the Vahana of Shrek, who is a Bhairav par excellence, he lives in the swamp, detested by society. He goes to rescue the princess, but he discovers that the princess is a Bhairavi. She's also a troll. I guess they got trolled. And then instead of winning the princess back for Prince Charming, who is actually a dick, in all appearances he seems to be perfect, but this kind of perfect world, that the first world that America corporate environment offers you, looks pretty, but to its core, it's rotten all the way through, because it's glamour. It's not actually substantially fulfilling. Whereas the things that look despisable are actually ultimately real and grounded and beautiful. That's why in Lord of the Rings, yes, we are mythology maxing today, I hope you don't mind. In Lord of the Rings, when they meet Aragorn, he's a beggar, just like Jesus. It's easy to like discount him, because he looks swarthy and problematic, and he's sitting drinking ale in the corner of a tavern, kind of eyeing up the young boys who are on their quest. They're not young, they're hobbits, they're young by hobbit standards, but they're like 80 or something, right? Like 50 or something. So then Aragorn saves them from the Nazgul, but they don't know if they can trust him. So like Sam asks Frodo, like, can we trust him? And Frodo says something so profound, so meaningful. He says, I feel like the servants of the enemy would seem fairer and feel fouler. That's a very important claim. They would seem fairer and feel fouler. And that's what corporate America, what urban society can look like. It can look promising. It can look like it has something to offer. But then when you actually get involved, you realize, oh my God, I'm trading all my time and all my energy to build someone else's dream. And that person doesn't even care. That person is not even happy. My parents might not be happy. My boss might not be happy. All my elders are miserable. And they're telling me to do the same thing that they did because that's what makes people happy? No, I reject that. The servant of the enemy will feel will feel fouler, though seem fair. And by contrast, the servant of God, the servant of truth and beauty, might seem fouler, but feel fairer. They might even seem feral, because their wildness is an indication of their freedom. So hence the Bhairava, the image of the Bhairava, the image of Shiva even, as Pashupati, as one who makes his clothes from animal skins, who has an axe because he lives off of nature, and who is lord of himself, having no lord over himself. So Shiva, Bhairava, Aragorn from Lord of the Rings, and of course Merlin, they're all like wild men, eccentrics, who live outside the fold of society, and therefore have a deeper, more ancient wisdom. Now, the dragon is also outside of society, and God is also out of society. And where are they? In the ocean. Poseidon in the Hesiod and in the various like Greek poets' depiction is like Bhairava, is like Shiva. In fact, Poseidon or Neptune carries the trident just like Shiva, because the trident is a symbol for that wild, untrammeled power that at times can be opposed to civilization. So what happens is Odysseus has Athena's blessing, but he has Poseidon's enmity. Like Poseidon hates him because he killed Poseidon's son. Now, Poseidon's son could be his own animal instinct. He kills the Cyclops, mostly because he doesn't understand the Cyclops, because he's afraid of the Cyclops. His reaction to non-understanding is fear, and his reaction to fear is violence, is to repress, subdue, and ultimately do away with that which frightens him. So this is the root of xenophobia, it's a root of racism and bigotry. We don't know what it's like to be gay if we're straight, so we hate the gay people and want them to go away. In the case of the Holocaust, that's exactly what they did. They took all the LGBTQIA people, put them on a train, shipped them off to a concentration camp, and incinerated them. We don't know what the Romani people are like. They read their tarot cards and they play weird body music and drink, and they call that religion, and they move around nomadically, and they don't seem to care about the things that we care about as a Western, civilization. And so fuck them. They're outcasts, the Romanis, who are Northwestern Indians. They're called gypsies because they're from Egypt, They used to think that the Romanis, although they're genetically Indian, they used to think the Romanis were Egyptian. In fact, they call them Bohemians because they used to stay in the Bohemian quarters of all these Western European cities. Like in Paris, if you were from the Romani community, you probably wouldn't be able to afford very expensive housing, mostly because you maybe first of all would not get a job in most institutions. Like, what accounting firm, what law firm is going to hire a brown-skinned, dark-haired, magical person who has a thick accent? That's one reason. But even if they did want to hire such people didn't want to be hired like that. They didn't want to work accounting jobs or legal jobs. They wanted to do their tradition. They wanted to play music, and they would often play violin, and they would make art, and they would read tarot cards, and they used to stay outside of the town in the forest, usually with a caravan and a few different caravans, like a kind of trailer park almost, where they would just hang out and have their own culture. So they did not care to work the typical jobs that a Western European society would have offered, and even if they did, what Western European law firm was going to hire them? So instead, they would have to make money in some other way, and therefore they weren't going to be the kinds of people that stayed in the Champs-Élysées or something. They're not going to be able to afford an apartment there. So instead, they would stay in what was called the Bohemian quarters, because people from the east, like Prague, Prague was the kingdom of Bohemia at that time, people from the east would settle in that place. So they were just called Bohemians because Prague is to the east of Paris. And to the east of that is Egypt. And to the east of that is India, maybe. So whether you're from India or Egypt, whether you're from Prague, whatever the case may be, the east for the Western mind, the civilized, urban, scientific mind, represented something outside. Just like Shiva and Bhairava represent something wild, both revered and feared, both fetishized and reviled and detested. So we have this weird love-hate relationship with ourselves, specifically with our anima or with our animus. So the underworld journey becomes important to talk about tonight when we talk about Nagas, because the underworld journey is like a journey to Poseidon. It's a journey to Shiva. It's a journey to Lucifer, and even the Christ had his 3 days in hell. Like Nachiketa has his 3 days at death's door. After 3 days, only then was death able to teach him the deepest things about life. And not only that, death was also willing to offer him dominion over the world, which he rejects in favor of the wisdom that he knew would give him something more than just wealth and longevity and power. So the real power is knowledge. And that knowledge will then, if you want, give you all those other things too. And these things shall be added unto you also. That's why it's important for the Christ to go to the desert. He has to leave behind all society, even the desert-dwelling ascetic society of John the Baptist. Even that monastic community of sadhus living in some kind of parasocial society, even that was too confined and too cramped for a true Bhairava like Christ. So Christ had to leave behind all structures of his home in Nazareth. He had to leave behind all the other towns that he visited with his people. He had to even leave behind his guru and his initiation kind of community, the spiritual circle that was John the Baptist, desert dwelling by the river shanty town. And who did he meet in the desert, if not the devil? You have to meet the devil. And the devil is none other than your very own essence nature, and its darkest, most repressed, most ancient form. You will eventually have to meet Makara, the crocodile. You can even use the chakras here from the tantric, maybe even neo-tantric framework. If you go from the Muladhara up, and you want to get access to the higher worlds, the first thing you have to go through is the Svadhisthana. And they say in the tantric world that all of your animal karmas are stored in the Muladhara. True. But if you go to the Svadhisthana, you don't just encounter your own personal karmas from your own past lives. You encounter the collective karma of all civilization, of all incarnate beings, including animals, including insects, including plants, in fact, including minerals, including so-called inanimate objects. There is a vast, untrammeled realm, and it is responsible, like in a Platonic archetypical sense, for the appearance and the experience of everything that you see here. And behind all physical forms, whether inanimate or animate, is this ocean. And in that ocean is said to be a monster, a sea monster. So when you think of the Kraken or like the Leviathan, I think Thomas Hobbes even calls it the Leviathan. And the urban project, the social contract that both Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Hobbes discusses, is actually a bulwark against the Leviathan. You have to protect yourself through like law and order, through society, through rules and regulations, through urbanization. You have to protect yourself from the Leviathan. Because if you don't build your Athenian cities with your Athenian sense of propriety, then the Leviathan will come. It's a remarkable claim, actually, that democracy, that money, commerce, law, order, these are all things meant to protect you from the dark night, from the real subconscious depths. And instead, you live in a little island, an island of your own making, which you consent to because the alternative is to be cast adrift in a very strange place where you are out of your depth, literally, where you meet beings that are more ancient than you, and where you meet beings that are more powerful than you, where all you have to rely on is not experience or strength or precedent, not even other people. All you have to rely on is faith. And had ye but faith, you could move mountains. It's a remarkable strength to trust yourself, to trust your intuition. But to do that, to get access to your intuition, you must first meet the crocodile, Makara, the dragon. So I want to use the word crocodile and dragon interchangeably tonight, if that's okay. I want to use the word Leviathan or serpent or snake interchangeably. Because whether it's a snake, and it's a snake in the Garden of Eden, of course, it's the snake that offers Eve the fruit. And by the way, it's important to note that the fruit is not defined in the Old Testament. There's no like actual fruit. It's of course a fruit because, in the Old Testament it says Eve looked at it and saw that it was delicious. So you could even argue that Eve chose the fruit not because she wanted to be like God, not because she even cared about knowing the difference between good and evil, but just because it was beautiful and tasty. And that's reason enough, by the way. It's reason enough to opt into something because it appeals to you on some emotional, intuitive level. You look at it and you like it. You look at it and you want to move towards it. That's enough of a reason to do it. She doesn't need to like reason it out. Just have to think, oh, you know what? I am nothing more than a toy here. Me and Adam are just wandering about naked in this garden. For what? For the delight of some demiurge that is keeping me in this prison like a person would have an ant farm? What does God get out of this? He just gets to watch me and the animals frolic about? Like, no, I deserve more than just being naked and self-effacing in a garden for the delight of some dark higher being. So she eats the fruit so she can reclaim sovereignty. This is the first time a human makes a choice, and she's punished for it. She's punished for choosing for herself. And you could say, you could even punish her twice. You can punish her for choosing the fruit, and you can punish her a second time for choosing the fruit for seemingly such a trivial reason as it looked good and it tasted good. At least if she thought about it, reasoned it out, and realized that this would be the best choice for her, you might forgive her. But instead, she didn't think about it. She saw it and intuitively moved towards it. And then she initiated Adam also. And the two of them are cast out of heaven the same way the young farmhand is cast out of his world in pursuit of something deeper. Because at the end of the day, he returns. He returns to where he started with fresh eyes, with a new perspective. And he returns with a power that can reinvigorate the king. And the king here is, of course, like Dhritarashtra in the Mahabharata, a representation of the mind. He reinvigorates the king, and through the Holy Grail, the symbol of femininity regained, the symbol of the subconscious integrated, then the crops grow, then the rains come, and everybody's happy. So the claim here is that even if you have a king and societal structures, even if you are following the social contract, you have soldiers and you have a military, and even if you have rules and regulations and checks and balances that keep everybody safe, safety is not happiness. Security is not fulfillment. So you can be safe and secure, but also miserable. You can live in a town, in a kingdom that has no rain, whose rivers and lakes have all dried up, whose king is despondent and unable to act, whose villagers, whose citizens are miserable and who are daily living like corpses, walking around, but inside dead. They're dead to their life. They are not awake to the freshness and joy and beauty of the world. To be awakened is to be reconnected to their subconscious. And the hero, in this case, is a shaman. The hero is someone who is courageous enough to venture into the untrammeled wilderness of the subconscious mind, and somehow or other, through God's grace and through their own ingenuity, and what's the difference between the two of those things? Somehow they manage to fashion a lifeboat, a raft, and they sail about and they encounter all these beings and they get initiation after initiation after initiation, and they come back to give to others what they themselves have found. But also they come back to inspire others, to each and every one of them go on the same journey. So until the hero has succeeded in inspiring everyone else that it can be done and should be done, his journey is not complete. So the hero usually comes back at least a role model, at least an inspiration, if not an outright teacher. So the Arthur, or whatever, whoever's going out, comes back a Merlin. He meets Merlin, someone who's already done the journey, and Merlin teaches him to be a Merlin unto others. And then the chain continues, and that's what we call Guru Parampara. Somebody somewhere had to go out into the wilderness, and they survived. Enough to at least be able to come back and meaningfully teach others, not what they learned, but to inspire them to go and learn it for themselves. And if you're lucky, they'll come with you. Merlin comes with Arthur, but there are moments when Merlin knows that Arthur has to do this for himself. So Merlin will be like, you must go into the cave. Like Yoda telling Luke that you must go into the cave and confront your shadow. So if you think of Fight Club and you think of this guy's anima, or in this case it's his animus actually, which is kind of interesting, like Tyler Durden, who is the tiler, he puts tiles to create reality. But if you flip the name Tyler, you get reality. So Tyler is reality. And I love that scene where they're both having a beer together and they're walking out of the bar, and our main character, the narrator, who is like all of us, he's like Arjuna in a sense, he asks, can I stay with you? And the devil, or Tyler Durden, is just like, just ask, man. All you have to do is ask. Don't be ashamed, just ask. Because free will is everything. The devil will never give you anything that you do not ask for. The devil, unlike God, will never subjugate you or ask you to serve him. The devil wants you to serve your own creative inspiration, just like he did. So he doesn't want slaves. He doesn't want minions. He doesn't want an army. He wants to liberate. He wants to give agency, because that's what he took for himself. So then Tyler Durden is like saying to this boy, this narrator, just ask, man. No big deal, just ask. And so the man, he asks, okay, can I stay with you? And Tyler's like, yeah, sure. And he flicks his cigarette, turns around and says, now hit me. And that's how it all begins, right? And Tyler hits him back, and they both get a taste for the fight, which is what is required of the hero when he ventures out. Because the moment he loses faith in himself, the moment he loses his fight, that's when he loses. But as long as he keeps true to his sincerity of purpose, his single-minded mission, as long as he stays true to his heart, he will always have will. And that will always triumphs over the seemingly impossible odds that are arrayed against him. So the hero always succeeds, but the beauty of the quest is he succeeds when it seems most unlikely that he will. So that's the hero's journey, and it always means the encounter with the dragon, or the encounter with the leviathan, or with the crocodile, or with the sea monster. Makara. And what Makara is in the Egyptian tradition is maybe Sobek or Apep. And then I'm going to eventually come to Tiamat and tell you why all these myths are arguing for the same thing. But let me start with this claim. In the Western European or medieval alchemical grimoires, we encounter the dragon, but the dragon is to be defeated. So you must kill the dragon in order to attain the princess. So now the dragon is different from the anima, the femininity that was lost. Again, remember, you can have security, you can have safety, you can have structure, but you might not have meaning. The inverse of that is to have meaning without safety, security, and structure, which is also not desirable. Like if you just had the ocean and the wilderness, that would arguably be better than what we have now, but it's not the best. The best thing is when you have the best of both worlds. When you have the structure, the security, and the safety. So you still have your king, you still have the police, you still have the military, you still have the traders, you still have like the 4 castes or whatever. You still have the urban civilization that you've worked so hard to build. But now there's something else also. There's meaning, there's freedom, and that's the utopia that arguably these stories are moving towards. And whether or not you can have a city and a smashan at the same time is obviously something that Indian civilization has debated for a long time. Can sadhus live in cities? Many of them choose not to. The cities will cast them out sooner or later, like the Romanis. And if they don't put you on a train and ship you off to a place to get incinerated, they will at least look down on you. They will at least like give you the cold shoulder and make sure you don't enter into any establishments. They will deny you your water, they'll deny you your food, and then you have to move into the forest to hunt your own food or to collect your own berries and vegetables and things like that. So a lot of times we found these two things at odds. The ones who want to be wild and free are not allowed to be in a city where wildness and freedom is detested in the name of security and comfort and safety and predictability. In the city, everyone cares about money. Everyone thinks in terms of time. They think in terms of means and ends. Just today, I was speaking to a psychic, and she was like, do you have any questions for me about your future? And I'm like, girl, I don't believe in the future. Like, there's only this. This is the moment revealing itself to me, and all past and all futurity is happening simultaneously now. I have no wants or desires or, like, in that sense, even any questions, which made for a very difficult reading. She's like, so what do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. And in the end, we just debated whether or not God was his creation. If God created the world, can God be something other than his creation? Is God not God by virtue of his eternal nature? If so, how can he not be now? And is he not God because he is all-pervasive? If so, how can he not be me? How can he not be you? How can he not be the tarot cards in the table? How can he not be this world? What kind of God would tell you that real joy, real peace, real beauty is later? As if to say that the purple flowers shining in the sunlight on the bush, or like the taste of Dunkin' Donuts coffee. See, Vrtta? Hail to the East Coast. I stopped by Dunkin' today for coffee. By necessity, but it's pretty good. So, how can God not be the coffee? Is the coffee excluded from God? Is this body, is this mind excluded from God? Is this place excluded from God? If so, how could that be God? That would contradict God's absolute nature, all-pervasive immanence. So, that God then is not God. That's Brahma, who Shiva kills and turns into a skull bowl. That God must be defeated, and Jacob does wrestle that God. At the bar, at the pub today, our bartender's name was Jacob. And I'm like, I'm a big fan of your work. You who wrestled God. So, the claim here is that, like, the city is a sort of temporality. It's a means to an end sort of thinking. It's this kind of rational, practical, responsible solution. And as Thomas Hobbes, and to some extent even Jean-Jacques Rousseau, as they argue, it looks like the social contract in its worst form is just maximizing practicality, responsibility in the name of comfort, security, and predictability. But at what cost? Yes, you're safe. Yes, you're secure. Yes, you're comfortable. But at what cost? You're also miserable. You're also dead. This is very important. There's a preservation of the body and even a preservation of the mind that cities are like civilizationally interested in. And in the name of the preservation of the body and mind, kind of like chemotherapy almost, in the name of keeping the body and mind alive, here's what happens. You work a job that you hate for money that you don't know how to spend, to please parents that you never really talk to, who will never understand you anyway, for whom nothing you accomplish would ever be enough, in order to fit into a society that you don't really feel at home in anyway. You've traded so much for comfort, security, and predictability. You've bought into the idea of time, the idea of means to an end thinking. And the wilderness is always about the now. It's always action, reaction, stimulus and response. In the wilderness, you have no time to think of tomorrow. It's always moment by moment aliveness. So we traded that for Thomas Hobbes' social contract in order to protect against the Leviathan. But at least Thomas Hobbes is mature enough to admit that the Leviathan is still there. At the edge of your campfire, there lurks some kind of shadow. It could be a wolf. It could be a jackal. It could be a panther. It could be an enemy from an enemy tribe. You don't really know what it is, but it's your fire and it's your society that keeps it at bay. What happens when the fire goes out? Then you are totally susceptible to that which you sense lurking on the outskirts. So maybe we should kill it. Maybe we should take torches and rush out into the night and kill those enemy tribes and kill the wolves. In America, they love to do that, by the way. They go out into Yosemite and they kill all the wolves. And then nature is fucked. And then there are too many gazelles. And the gazelles eat all the plants. And once the gazelles eat all the plants, then the structural integrity of the river is gone. And the river floods and all the humans die. So when they go out to kill wolves, they end up killing themselves. And similarly, if you kill the dragon, that would be a terrible outcome. If you end up killing the dragon, killing the Leviathan, decapitating the serpent, trampling the crocodile to death, you're fucked. Because then you've killed your own power. Not only have you suppressed and repressed the power, you've killed your own power. But lucky for us, the dragon cannot be killed. The dragon is eternal and it's immortal. Even Marduk, the premier Babylonian god, Even Indra, the premier Vedic god, though they tried their best with all their magic and might, they could not kill the dragon. Even Zeus, when fighting the chthonic monster that Hera sent to kill him when he cheated on her, the symbolization of a woman's rage, he tried to kill it. He was not successful. Women don't feel their anger anymore because they're numbed, but that anger is still there. All the witches that have burnt on all the stakes in Europe, their screams are still echoing in your subconscious. Their burning flesh is now your burning will, which slowly is gaining momentum. So you cannot kill the dragon. The question then is, what do you do in response to the dragon? Now, Thomas Hobbes will say, build a society, enter into a social contract, trade everything for security, comfort, safety, predictability. At least Thomas Hobbes admits that the Leviathan remains alive, but is held at bay by your cities, by your civilization, by your fires. We're afraid of the dark, That's why our cities are filled with perpetual artificial light. So even at night, the glow of the city light reminds you that you're still in the circle of fire. You're not yet susceptible to that which crouches in the dark, a shadowy form that you cannot really make out. But you sense its malevolence only because of your lack of understanding. When you don't know something, you fear the thing. And when you fear the thing, you feel violent towards the thing. So the Holocaust, like the Nazi project of urban civilizational attempts, they saw the Romani people as the other. They saw the LGBTQIA as the other. They saw the Jewish people as the other. And their response to the other was to use all the might of Western civilizational technology, which is accounting, which is bookkeeping, which is railroads, which is science, which is electricity. They used all of that in order to kill the dragon being embodied in every gay person, in every dark-haired, dark-eyed person. And so they shipped them off over to incinerate them and do horrific experiments on them. But did they succeed? No, nobody succeeded. No one has killed the dragon yet. Marduk couldn't, Zeus couldn't, Indra couldn't. Now in the Vedas, there's a scene where Indra fights Vrtta. Vrtta is a dragon, and you could say a very early form of Kundalini. Of course, we're going to talk about Kundalini in a bit. But the earliest form in the Vedas of Kundalini is this serpent, this Naga named Vrtta. The word Vrtta means to, in a sense, oppose, parivritta, or to invert, or to like coil, or to like hide, like avarana, like veshta. Like Vrtta means to go around or to hide. Vritti. Vritti means dynamism or movement. So if you take the word vritti to mean movement, and then you divest it of its sense of opposition, because movement is always either an action or reaction. It pushes against other moving parts. If you take away the connotation of inversion or reaction or opposition, if you take away the idea of covering or veiling, which are all ideas that have been imposed upon Vrtta, if you take the word at its like most basic literal meaning, it's like the word vritti, it just means movement. Movement is scary, because dynamism means change, and change means unpredictable outcomes. So the civilizational project is an entropic exercise in resisting change, in resisting dynamism. You have roles, and you're supposed to abide by those roles, because otherwise you would be unpredictable. The woman and the woman's body is a symbol of maximal dynamism. Do you know like the Katy Perry song? You change your mind like a girl changes clothes, because you're hot and you're cold, you're yes and no, you're no. Like, that's the beauty of the woman's mind, and everybody's mind, is that it's yes and then it's no. It's hot and then it's cold. It wants something and then hates the very thing that it gets. Like, the important thing about a woman's body is that it's always changing. The important thing about a woman's mind is that it's always changing. And the thing about a woman is, since the Neolithic urbanization that many cultures in the world went through, the woman became an object to be owned and possessed, a beautiful piece of furniture whose dynamism is a threat, because she could cheat on you, she could leave you, she could turn on you, she could become angry at you, and all of these things are so scary to a culture afraid of dynamism and afraid of change. So in this story, in the Vedic story, Indra, who is the king of the gods, like a Zeus figure, not actually, in the Vedas there's another character named Dyaus. He's a sky god, and Dyaus is probably Zeus. But what Zeus does in the Olympic Greek Indo-European context is what Indra does in the Vedic context. So you can associate Indra with Zeus in this way. Both of them wield the thunderbolt, the Vajra. So in that sense, Zeus is Indra. Now, Indra is Marduk. So I just want you to think that the word dragon, the word crocodile, the word serpent, the word leviathan, they all mean the same thing, okay? This like monster that dwells in the subconscious. I want you to think of rivers, lakes, oceans as like a symbol for the subconscious mind, in which lurks this dark chthonic beast Do you know? Okay, so having said that, Indra, who is like the lord of cities and civilization, who is the king of Olympus in a sense, he has to fight Vrtta, because Vrtta is like coiled around a particular mountain in which there are all these jewels or resources, and Vrtta is preventing the resources from flowing forth. So Indra goes and fights Vrtta, and it's this like heroic battle. It's like a profound battle because they're evenly matched, and Indra has to use magic. He uses Indra Jal, his net, the Jala. The net that Indra throws is filled with rubies, and it's basically Maya. So Indra has the power to subjugate beings with deception and with illusions. So the word Indra Jala later becomes Maya for Shankara and the Advaita Vedantins of that camp. Maya does not appear anywhere in the Upanishads. The word Maya is very modern actually. It doesn't appear on the scene until maybe like, I would say 8th or 9th century AD. It is only with Shankara that we start describing the world as an illusion. And that's probably also based off the Buddhist concept of Shunya. But in the Vedas, Maya is not unreal. Maya is just the deceptive power of a god that uses that power to keep things subjugated. In other words, to keep things ordered, structured, and predictable. And if you take the word Vrtta at its literal meaning, you just have dynamism itself. So Shakti. So Indra has to fight the chaotic, sort of ectonic, primordial dynamism of life. And he kills Vrtta. This is important. He kills Vrtta, and by killing Vrtta, he takes her jewels and then gives it to people and brings wealth into society. So in order to like have wealth, you must go into the subconscious realm and mine there. And if you want to bring back Shakti, you have to meet those guardians of the mines who don't like when you come and take their jewels. So don't you think a better strategy here would have been to like befriend the dragon? To be like, I want to know about you. I want to understand you. What are these jewels and why are you hiding them? And can I have some? It makes more sense to propitiate the dragon and to say, oh dragon, we're starving. You have all these jewels. Can you give me some? And so propitiating the dragon, like making friends with the dragon, worshipping the dragon, learning about the dragon, and ultimately becoming the dragon, that's a whole other arc which we are on as Kaula practitioners, as Shaktas, as worshippers of the goddess. But the first idea I think I want to really drive home tonight is this. Vrtta, the dragon, is dynamism itself. It's Shakti itself. And by Shakti, we mean the unpredictable, I'm going to say chaotic, presentation of all possibilities. And it's there that we find our power. And often in the civilizational project of creating a predictable, safe, secure, and comfortable environment, we look upon that as a threat. We say, the dragon is hoarding jewels. The dragon has kidnapped the princess. And only by killing the dragon can you get the wealth and can you get the princess. We think the Western, like European, alchemical 15th, 16th century depiction of this story is like our Vedic early depiction of Indra killing Vrtta. And we think it's the wrong strategy. Wrong because it will never work. You cannot kill the dragon. You can only enter into a Hobbes-like societal contract that tricks you into thinking humans are nasty and brutish because it's one of the infinite possibilities. And then because of your fear of humans, your fear of each other, you then create a social contract and give the state the monopoly on violence, call the military and call the police. So you have your problem now because of your own opting into a social contract which you at any time can opt out of. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to give up your time and energy for money, because the kind of money that you get is way less than you deserve and not really what you want anyway. A lot of people want success along the lines of what society says success is because they want pleasure and meaning. But often you don't get any pleasure or meaning, and you trade off the pleasure and meaning of right now because you want some future pleasure or meaning. So the idea of purpose being something that you attain later, the idea of something higher and better later, that's obviously something the Indraic, Zeusic, Olympic, Mardukian impulse is going to reify as a religion. So if we think of Nietzsche's responses to Catholic religion and to Protestant religion, it's very important that we think of the creditor-debtor relationship, the religion of sheep and camel. We're afraid, and in our fear, we consent to a social contract that tells us that everything we want is later, not now, and therefore we should trade off what is tangible and real and present and actual for what is conceptual and abstract and never really guaranteed. Safe, in the name of safety. So this is a pretty unsafe thing to do actually. It's pretty unsafe to trade off what is immediately present and actual for what is only conceptual and promised. Like Christianity is an unsafe deal. Because you do everything that everyone tells you to do in the hopes that they're right. But what if they're wrong? And Pascal says you can take a wager. I'm not so sure it's a good wager. It's good for him on his deathbed. He's like, okay, now I'll be Christian, I guess, because the risk of that being true is far greater than the risk of it not being true. So I'll just profess my faith on the deathbed and hope that when I die, I'll meet God. And as a Christian, he'll be like, okay, fine, come into heaven. And what is heaven? More of the same. Heaven is just a more secure, a more safe, a more comfortable place. How horrific. Heaven has no, as it were, zest and juice. Arguably, if you go to heaven, you might also, like the hero in the hero's journey, have to go on a hero's journey. Because heaven probably has a king who is despondent. It probably has people who are safe and secure and comfortable, but miserable. It's just rivers of milk and honey, but they've probably dried up. There's no juice and joy. So to me, Lucifer is like the hero in the hero's journey. He looks around, he says, fuck this. And he goes on a journey, an underworld descent. And maybe one day, if heaven is mature, they'll let him back in and he will teach them the true religion. So when you think of Marduk, when you think of Zeus, and when you think of Indra, and if you think of Thomas Hobbes and his book Leviathan, you're dealing with the same thing. The same response to chaos, to dynamism, to unpredictability, to Shakti, which is an attempt to either kill it outright, which Zeus does and which Indra does, allegedly, or subdue it by entering into a contract that keeps it at bay. Now, the next claim. So hopefully you can see how this talk about Nāgas is really a talk about the subconscious mind and the journey from Muladhara to Swadhisthana, as it were, or the journey to Manidvip, the Manipura, in which all our real power lies. You cannot enter into Anahata or Vishuddha or Agya. You cannot get into the higher realms until you first complete this underworld journey. So spirituality begins with an underworld journey. You know you're on the quest when you're forced to, like Luke Skywalker, confront that which lurks in the dark cave of your subconscious, which is really just yourself. Right? Luke goes into the darkness and there he meets himself and he sees his own dark potential as Darth Vader. So you have to see your own darkness. And then the question is, once you encounter that darkness, what do you do? Do you kill it? Do you subjugate it? Do you ride it? Or do you befriend it? So I want to make a case for befriending the Nāgas. And so coming back to the Mahabharata now, these boys are drowned. They're drowned underwater. So whenever you meet Nāgas, in the context of the Mahabharata, almost always they're underwater. And another thing to note is that in the maximally rich cosmology of Vedic civilization, there are lokas, astral realms. They're like dream realms. And you visit them in your dreams. Right? So like in your dream you go there, or in your trance you go there, and the whole thing feels like a dream actually. The whole thing feels kind of like atemporal, it's magical, it's mystical, and it doesn't feel like this feels. Although after a while, this starts to feel like how that feels, like a dream. And in that dream, you might speak in languages that you don't even know. And more importantly, allegedly you can hear this, even in this realm. So like when you meet the Nāgas, you meet them in this realm that's like full of jewels and shining things, and the Nāgas themselves might not even appear as snakes. Like last night, they were not snakes. They were just light, forms of light and voices from the light. It's just, it all comes in this synesthesic way where it's like only now when you're awake can you mythologize using the symbols of this waking world. So when we talk about Nāgas, we might not actually be talking about the snakes, the literal snakes that exist in this world. But the way you relate to snakes and the way you treat snakes is the way you deal with the symbol that the snake offers. And the snake and the crocodile and the lizard, they all symbolize this reptilian presence, which might not at all even be a reptile. When you meet them, they appear like gods, shining forms of power that are always down to teach you something. And they basically teach alchemy. They teach grammar, they teach medicine, they teach psychic forms of control like yoga. That's why we'll have to talk about Patañjali. I don't want to be repetitive, we did that last time, so you can just watch my last lecture called Snakes, Dragons and Nāgas in Tantra. There we talk about Patañjali, we talk about Abhinavagupta, who many say is the new serpent, right? Abhinavagupta, his name is Abhinavagupta Pada. That's the honorific that you give to any teacher, like Shankara Pada, Padma Pada. So if you put the Pada after the name Abhinavagupta, what you get is Abhinavagupta Pada. Gupta Pada means secret foot. Snakes have a secret way of moving about. The secret foot is a moniker for snake. Abhinava means new. So Abhinavagupta Pada means Abhinava, the new, Gupta Pada, serpent. So Abhinava is considered, like Patañjali, to be a Nāga. And then in the Buddhist tradition, my favorite Buddhist actually, interestingly enough, is of course the crazy Drukpa Kinle. He's like the ultimate Heruka. Heruka is the Tibetan word for Bhairava. I love Milarepa, I love Marpa more, and I love Drukpa Kinle the most. But like putting all of those Tibetan masters aside, if you look at Indic Buddhism, my favorite is Nagarjuna. But although he's understood mostly as a philosopher, as a logician, as a kind of Navya Nyaya Buddhist master, like we must not forget that he's also an alchemist. Nagarjuna was a magician. He knew how to make gunpowders and things like that. He could make potions and poisons, and he loved magic. He loved alchemy, just like Milarepa, who was a master sorcerer, a dark sorcerer actually, because he used his magic to bring down a hailstorm in order to kill his enemies. And this is interesting. Many people think he turned away from a life of magic and sorcery when he came to Marpa. Not so. Marpa employed him. Marpa told him to kill his enemies, because there were Buddhists who were coming on pilgrimage to see Marpa, and these bandits would assault them on the streets on their way to like see Marpa. And so all these bandits and highway robbers or whatever were a problem for Marpa and his disciples. So instead of saying to Milarepa, hey, magic, bad, sorcery, bad, you know what Milarepa did? He made like scorpions appear and to terrorize his evil family. And he had every right to do so. They were uncharitable, they were treacherous, and Marpa's response to the treachery of his uncles and aunties and his devotion to his mother compelled him to do this. His mother is the one who sent him to learn magic. His mother told him, you must learn magic to avenge me from our uncles and aunties, because they've disrespected your father and they've taken everything from us. Go learn magic and kill our enemies. So Marpa is the guru that Milarepa eventually meets in his hero's journey. But before that, how many shamans and mystics he learned from? And he learned magic. Why are you holding up Cheerios? Are you doing a spell on me? What is the cheers, mate? Like people are just holding up Cheerios right now. I have no idea what this bit is about, but there are Cheerios, and like so much happens in the chats. I don't read most of what happens in the chat, but like I'm sure this is a bit from the chat, but I guess here are some Cheerios. Professionally speaking, that's Brahmin. So Marpa, eventually Milarepa meets Marpa. Marpa does not tell Milarepa to leave behind what he learned. Instead, to assimilate it, to integrate it, and redirect it. Just like Sri Ramakrishna does not tell people to overcome lust and anger and pride and all those darker emotions. Instead, he says, increase your lust and redirect it towards God. In other words, a tantric guru will never tell you anger is a problem. They will never tell you lust is a problem or greed is a problem. They'll never tell you the world, your body and mind are problems that are to be overcome. They'll tell you that you're face to face with a dynamic, unpredictable dragon, and the way to approach this is not to try to subjugate it, repress it, or push it away and create a contract that shields you from its influence. It's to worship it, to propitiate it, and ultimately, if you're really like a heroic worshipper, to understand it, and ultimately to become it. To integrate the shadow is to become the shadow. To possess a deity is to be possessed by the deity. And what we have done in the Shakta world is we have deified that dragon, which maybe other traditions have tried to at best repress, at worst kill. And it never works. That which is suppressed comes back with double force. It's like when you push a spring down. You can hold the spring down for only so long before you lose control and it springs out and it destroys everything. Like the Catholic priest who deny their sexual impulses and end up diddling altar boys. What you end up getting are people who posture as holy men, but who behind closed doors do things that they themselves are guilty about. And their guilt about those things only makes the thraldom to those things so much more intense. We do away with guilt and with shame, but we admit that there's often a lack of tact, a lack of finesse, a lack of understanding when it comes to these things. So we're not suggesting free reign. We're not suggesting license. We're not saying someone should just give in to their most violent, darkest urges and let it flow freely. To me, that would be preferable, because at least that would be honest and authentic. To me, the only sin is dishonesty and inauthenticity. And how much are we cajoled into being dishonest and inauthentic in our desire to preserve our social contract, the desire to preserve how we appear to others? That, to me, is worse than just evil maxing. But the best outcome is not the license to just descend into an animalistic chaos. The best outcome is to reintegrate, to bring into the city that which is in the forest, and then turn the city into a forest and the forest into a city. That is the Advaita that the Shakta world wants to offer. The best of being a human is the best of the angelic realm and the underworld realm. Osiris must be killed and dismembered in order to be remembered, and the word religion just means remembering, to be remembered, and now as the immortal lord of the underworld. So Osiris becomes Osar in the Egyptian, Osiris in the Greek. Osiris becomes the lord of the underworld. So until you become Hades, until you become Osiris, you cannot be Bhairava or Heruka. You cannot be Shiva until you come to terms with your own wildness, enough to become wild yourself. Shiva is Pashupati, the lord of wild things. He's the lord of all, having no lord over himself. So then, when you think of Indra fighting Vrtta, when you think of Zeus fighting Hera's monster, the ectonic beast that she summons, I forget its name, but maybe somebody can remind me. The name of the beast that Hera sends to kill Zeus. Medusa is somebody that I would date, at least be friends with, not somebody that I would kill and behead. So notice that there's a subversion here. Instead of Kali beheading the hero beheads Medusa, and that's his triumph. Now I want to come to Marduk. This is where our story really starts. So thus far, you already know, mythologically speaking, we have a parallel between the Targaryens and, the Game of Thrones world and dragon riding. Daemon is obviously my favorite character. I think he has things right. We have a parallel between How to Train Your Dragon. We have a parallel there with Aragon, that old children's story. We have some Lord of the Rings paragons here. Yeah, Typhon is Apophis, right? Is Typhon the same as Apep or Apophis? I don't know. There's a darker set, and it's Typhon or Apep or Apophis, and I'm going to get to that in just a little bit, because I want to get to the Egyptian and Babylonian stuff when it comes to the dragon or the Leviathan. But we see a parallel now with Thomas Hobbes and Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who has a parallel view. He has a contrasting view to Thomas Hobbes. He doesn't actually believe that people are nasty, brutish by nature. He thinks that people are actually kind and compassionate, and if given a chance, they wouldn't just descend into the purge. They would actually help each other. They would be kind to one another. Because they're allowed freedom, their freedom will manifest as gentleness. It's when you take away freedom that we have all these suppressed, repressed urges, which allows us to be really cruel to one another, but in societally approved ways. So what you see now is a lot of violence parading as peace. You see a lot of cruelty parading as politeness and kindness. You see a lot of dishonesty parading as political correctness, or at least politeness. So what Thomas Hobbes says is, if you let people do whatever they want, they'll be evil. They'll be nasty and brutish to one another. But look at what the civilizational project has done for us. It's allowed us to be as nasty and brutish as we otherwise, quote unquote, would have been without society, except now we have a societal way to justify our evil. Laborers and employers can justify their tyranny over laborers. And people pursuing animalistic goals like mating and reproduction, like eating and killing, they can do that by going to universities, by working on Wall Street, and by doing it in ways that their parents can be proud of. So you know what a blue-collar crime is versus a white-collar crime? So a white-collar crime is just a crime that your parents will be proud of you committing. So success in the world means lying, cheating, scamming, but in ways that for whatever reason we're okay with. Why are you okay with trading? Reincarnation aside, why are you okay? This is a very serious question. Why are you okay with trading your time and energy in order to build someone else's dream? Why do you work at a place that you hate? Why do you do a job that you resent for a boss that you probably don't even have a good relationship with, that you resent? Why do you do that? Why not take back your autonomy and take back your day? Why do you have a schedule that's not your own schedule? This is crazy, right? It's crazy of you to give up your time and energy and the best years of your life doing what your parents told you to do and what society told you to do. Now, it would be a different thing if what society told you to do and what your parents told you to do is actually what you wanted to do. That would be a different thing, but rarely is it that. And the reason why most people just do what they're told to do is because they've not taken the time to actually think about what they want to do. Because to actually do that would require an underworld journey of heroic and epic proportions. To know what you want to do would require that you have to know yourself. To know yourself truly is to go into those places that you fear going into. To come to terms with your instincts and your urges and your impulses. So what Vrtta does, what Indra does to Vrtta, what Zeus does to that ectonic beast that Hera summons, and what Marduk does to Tiamat is what Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan is all about. Jordan Peterson, who is like a modern Thomas Hobbes, I guess you could say, patriarchal demagogue who writes books about order, structure, and success. There, the first thing you have to do is fight the dragon, right? Like he uses the metaphor of the dragon just like Thomas Hobbes, just like the early mythologies of all civilizations. And he says the way to fight the dragon is to clean your room, to bring order and structure to your life. That's the way you fight off the dragon, because the dragon represents chaos and disorder. So Tiamat, Apep, Sobek, Typhon, all of these are like Mesopotamian and Egyptian, I would even say properly Western symbols for what I want to talk about tonight when it comes to Kundalini and Nāgas, and Kali as Nagaman, or Kali as the mother of snakes, who is herself a snake, the mother of dragons. Now, coming back to the story of Nāgas, they're usually depicted as underwater beings, and the water, you already know, is a symbol for the subconscious mind. It's like Makara dwelling in the ocean of the Svadhisthana, the realm of all of your impulse and instincts, but also the realm of all of your creativity. So there you find your will to life, which is intimately related to your libido. The libidinous urge to create, when manifested physically, looks like sex and looks like lust. When manifested intellectually, looks like the desire for intellectual rapport. When manifested spiritually, looks like making music, writing books, writing poems, starting startups and companies and things that are inspired. You know, there's no way of saying what form this libidinous urge to creation will take, but to discover that for yourself, to reacquaint yourself with that Shakti, which is called Icha, will. To find that requires that you go into the realm where the darker versions of that also exist. Your urge to lie, cheat, steal, deceive, which we argue is present even in the city, except it is present in the sublated form. It lurks at the edge of the fire, but its influence is felt from within the circle of light. So within the circle, people kill each other, lie and steal because they're all afraid of that dark thing. The hero, the shaman, the mystic, goes out and sees what that dark thing is. And once he sees that the dark thing is a friend and an ally and a teacher, then he comes back and says, Bhairava taught me this, Kali taught me this, the jackal taught me this, the dragon, the serpent taught me this. So Eve, upon learning from the serpent, can now teach other women. She actually taught her husband first, no? So like Eve and Lilith are important examples here. So Lilith, Hecate, these are all beings who represent either a disciple of that snake or that snake itself. So you have two characters here, the princess and the serpent, or you have the serpent and Eve, or the serpent and Lilith. So I would argue that if you have the princess or the disciple, that's good. The princess is captured by the serpent. What if you get there and you realize she's actually in love with the serpent, and the serpent and the princess are living happily ever after, and then you go and kill the serpent? What do you think she's going to feel? Like Shiva killing Ganesh at the door. She's like, what the fuck, dude? That was my boyfriend. That was my teacher. Like, what, you killed the serpent? Who asked you to do that? And the guy's like, I'm a knight. I was a farmhand, and then some king told me that you were trapped here. And she's like, did you ask me first? Did you ever once ask me whether I was trapped here? Don't you think that I chose to stay here because I'm getting magical lessons from my snake like teacher and my snake friend, and now you just killed him? And then she becomes the dragon and kills you. You know, so you don't know that the princess is captured by the serpent. You might discover that she's in the tower of the wizard because she's a disciple of the wizard, no? It's a very important point. You don't know that Eve is tricked by the devil. Who is tricking who? Who is giving and who is receiving? Arguably, the devil is there to serve Eve. So if you think of Hecate or Lilith, you're thinking of the woman as the disciple of chaos, the woman as the oracle who's willing to enter states of disordered rapture in order to receive something from beyond. And then what she receives is revered by even an urban Greek society. So like the Spartan generals and kings, the Athenian generals and kings, they won't do anything until they first see such a woman. Now that woman is not the same as the dragon. In this case, the woman is the disciple of the dragon. So they go to the woman, and the woman lives outside of society, of course, in her own mystical ascenic society. There, she imbibes substances and puts her mind in a disordered, chaotic state. In other words, she must subvert the tyranny of temporality. She must step outside of an urban and civilized way of thinking, a practical, responsible, logical way of thinking. She must go beyond logic. And sometimes the way to go beyond logic is to sink beneath it. So those who like consume substances, naturally society hates them because it makes them more animalistic. It puts them in touch with that subconscious mind. They say drunk words are sober thoughts. I love that statement. You know, people trust a drunkard because the drunkard is like a child, is like a mad person. They just say what they mean, and they speak in riddles and symbols. Now, society doesn't like that. They don't like when people speak in this disordered way. Shamans, mystics, we listen. If somebody speaks in symbols, if they're like speaking in parcel tongue or something, you know, if they're like channeling serpents, if they're channeling the Kundalini, if they're channeling the subconscious mind, what comes through is a language of poetry, a language of myth and symbol. So the oracle, she'll huff her, whatever it is she's huffing, chloral hydrate for Nietzsche. He was in this sense a disciple of the dragon too. They huff their whatever it is that they're huffing. They drink whatever it is that they're drinking. Kikodes in the case of the Eleusinian mystery school. Black dog or royal stag in the case of the Bhairavas of Tarapit and Kamakya. And they become wild. Their eyes roll about. They become unpredictable and disordered. And in that state of madness, real wisdom comes. A child can speak prophecy. A mad woman can speak prophecy. And an oracle is both a child and a mad woman. And she's possessed. And in that state of being possessed by the dragon speaks through her. She's a mouthpiece. So now, really urbanized, civilized society has always revered the mystic and the shaman, although they have at the same time feared them and not wanted to like hang out with them. They're like up there in the mountains. But you know, there is some speculation that kings would often sleep with them. You know, because the child born of such a woman is a child born of the gods. And so the king is very likely to look for a child, not from his own queen or consort, but from a priestess of Samothraki or a priestess, demigods. The demigods are born of the dragon, actually. So someone like Achilles, his mom is Aphrodite, right? Like these great masters of war in the Greek sense, they're revered and feared because they are like eccentric, wild people. What's that?
Percy Jackson.
Yeah, I missed out on that whole Percy Jackson arc. I missed out on Aragon and Percy Jackson, but I think I understand enough to be like, okay, these are modern ways of reconciling with myths that we have as a culture forgotten. A culture that forgets its myths and its stories is truly lost. And that's why like Vrtta, he's writing science fiction novels. The entire civilization depends on that. It depends on stories told in song and told in books. And if you don't go and watch movies, if you don't listen to music, if you don't read stories, what the fuck are you doing? You know? So you're like Patroclus, Achilles. Yeah, exactly. You have to write. You have to write poems. You have to write stories. You have to sing songs. Because the creative urge is the way that we channel the muses. It's the way that we channel the dragon. So Kundalini, and an awakened Kundalini, is always associated to genius. So great scientists like Tesla, they were disciples of the dragon. I love this phrase, disciple of the dragon. If nothing because of the alliteration. And the da sound in Sanskrit, you know, da means danam, to give. Danam. So what does the dragon do? The dragon never takes. The dragon only gives. Gives an apple, like the chaos apple of Eris. The dragon gives knowledge. Heretical knowledge in some cases. The dragon gives an inspiration, idea. The dragon gives eros, life force. Yeah.
Why does it not want anything in return?
It has everything. It is everything. It wants only to express because it's full. And that which is full pours out. Like the ocean pours out.
Why is it considered negative then?
Right? Because when the ocean pours into the city floods. Or when a genius shows up, he, she, they completely revolutionize the way that we think. So genius is always resisted because it's change. And the whole, like we said earlier, the whole civilizational project is a quest for security and safety and comfort, which means minimizing the unpredictable dynamism of the universe and maximizing a predictable tradition that stays the same. That's why tradition is so revered, because something that we did before is something we should do now, which is something we should do later. It doesn't change. But genius type individuals come and question tradition, like Patañjali. His first act of genius, arguably, is to question the Catholic conventions of his time, and he was kicked out of Oxford for it. Basically, he made a pamphlet, like Emerson. He gave a address at Harvard, and the address, although he didn't mention Brahman or the Gita or the Vedas, his ideas were so revolutionary, they were so Indic, so Eastern, that Harvard kicked him out. And even William James, right? And now like the Psychology Hall is named after William James. So later, people come to revere Emerson's and Whitman's. But Whitman, like his poetry was not successful in his time. And Emerson loved Whitman. Emerson and Whitman had a correspondence. And Emerson saw Whitman's genius way before anyone else did. So the disciples of the dragon will always recognize other disciples of the dragon.
Nietzsche carried an Emerson all the time.
Right, Nietzsche, right. And
Very
Emerson
movement.
is the prime minister, Nietzsche is the war general, and we are terrorist guerrilla rebels. The best compliment,
More.
I think I got 2 really good compliments. Sananshi said, I always wanted to meet Nietzsche, but she's like, everything you've ever said to me is everything Nietzsche is saying. So it's like, okay, cool. So the best compliment I ever got, I thought, was that I'm exactly like Nietzsche. Win. The better compliment is when you were like, I'm even left of Nietzsche. I'm more radical than Nietzsche. I'm like, fuck yeah. Because we have Shaktism, we have Taoism, and that is Nietzsche maxing par excellence. Plato's cave to Plato's rave. That journey is a journey in Nietzsche. So Nietzsche is a disciple of the dragon, yes. The oracles at Delphi were all disciples of the dragon. And those of you, many of you in this room, are clearly disciples of the dragon. Because when you speak, other people have no fucking clue what you're saying, except for other disciples of the dragon who can understand your symbol, who see your enthusiasm and your sincerity, which everyone else might revile or try to like lock away in some kind of institution. Because the dragon, especially when it manifests in women, is something that you have to put away, either in prison or an institution. There was a time, by the way, when a poet, when they were put in prison, felt like they had actually accomplished something with their poetry. And this is a claim that Hakim Bey makes. He says, poetry used to be an act of terrorism, because when you write a really powerful poem, you can change the course of civilization. So a poem that is resisted by society, that is hated by the king, is a good poem. And so if the poet is marched off to his death by execution, or marched off to his incarceration, he marches with his head held high in pride, having contributed some literary feat of true importance. So if you're writing poems and people are buying your poetry books and celebrating you as a great poet, fuck that. Then all you've done is rendered your creativity in service of this demiurgic force of predictability. If you write a poem that other people want to hear, fuck you. Are you even a poet at that point? But if you write a poem that you heard from the depths of your darkest subconscious reaches, and if you were to express that poem, see what happens. People will see it, both love it and hate it at the same time. You will be both loved and hated, both revered and feared, like the oracles at Delphi, and your children will be demigods, for you are the goddess. You are the mouthpiece of the goddess. So in the moment when the oracle is huffing and when she's like puffing her prophecy, in that moment, she's a goddess. You see, in the moment where the oracle or the disciple speaks, they are synonymous with that which is expressing through them. So their word is God's word. That's when we look at Abhinavagupta's secondary sources. He's not Shiva, the way that Shiva is Shiva. So his work is a tantra, but not like tantras are tantras. The agama or the tantra is so called because it's a direct revelation from God, from the wild man par excellence, from Bhairava or from the goddess. Now, when Abhinavagupta is writing and commenting on those tantras, we Shaivas revere him and see his work as synonymous with the tantras. We say he is Dakshinamurti Shiva. In that moment, he is in that moment Shiva, and what's coming from his mouth came from Shiva. So why should his words not be treated like the words of the tantra? After all, weren't all tantras written by some person? Vasugupta heard Shiva in his dream and he wrote the Shiva Sutra. So the Shiva Sutra, is it from Shiva or Vasugupta? Well, it's from the mouth of Vasugupta, it's from the pen of Vasugupta, but the words are Shiva's words. And if you ask Vasugupta whether or not he thought about what he was going to say, most likely he will say that he channeled it. Like Vivekananda, he would say he would go into a trance, give a talk, and then come out of the trance and be like, whoa, what did I just say? Or at times, people would hear Vivekananda at night, in the middle of the night, when he should have been sleeping, they would hear him talking. And later he would say, yes, in the middle of the night, a being comes and stands next to my bed and talks to me all night and gives me ideas for tomorrow's lecture. That's how I'm like, wait for the lecture. So the question then is, do we see the princess as different from the dragon? Do we see the disciple of the dragon or the oracle of the beyond as being something other than the beyond? And often we say, no. Abhinavagupta is Shiva and Shiva is Kali. There is something outside of reason, outside of practicality, outside of the circle of fire that is called civilization, outside of tradition. And that something is synonymous with the one who goes there to learn from it. So the person who goes to meet the dragon realizes that they are the dragon and comes back a dragon among men. And they are, of course, what we call the shaman, the mystic, the hero, the teacher, the wizard. And so Nagarjuna is an important example of such a person. Nagarjuna wrote great logical treatises, and his main contribution to Indian civilization is his Mula Madhyamika Karika, written in Sanskrit. It's a Buddhist void text. It argues for voidism. It's Shunyavada par excellence. It's called Prasangika Madhyamika. It created a whole tradition of Buddhism. And the Gelugpa school, the Tibetan Dalai Lama tradition, they are in that lineage of the Prasangika Madhyamikas. Nagarjuna, though, although he's recognized as a logician, as a grammarian, as a Buddhist Sanskrit master who was very rational, we shouldn't forget that this guy was also an alchemist and a magician of high standing. And his name is very important. Naga Arjuna. He's Nagarjuna. So in some older depictions of him, he's depicted with a snake's tail. So the great Buddhist master Nagarjuna is a Naga. Abhinavagupta is considered the new serpent. Patañjali is also considered a Naga. So coming back to the mantra for Patañjali, we say, Yogena chitasya padena vacha malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopa karutamam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjali ranatosmi abahu purushakaram shanka chakrasi dharinam sahasra shirasam shvetam pranamami Patanjali. So Patanjali gives three things. He gives yoga for the mind. Yogena chitasya. He gives pada for speech, padena vacham. And he gives vaidya, medicine, vaidyakena, for the malam of the sharira. So sharira means body, mala means illness or impurity of the body. So medicine, health, longevity, life force, these are all things that have been associated with Nagas. So if you have low energy, if you are constantly sick, if you have some kind of ailment on the level of the body, the kind of medicine you're looking for might come from Nagas. And that's why Asclepios, his symbol is a staff, which of course represents the spine, the nervous system, and the snake wrapped around the staff. So that's why I think Asclepios is often mixed up with Mercury. So the symbol of Mercury is the caduceus, and the caduceus are these two serpents that entwine around a central pillar. That symbol by the American Medical Association is actually a misrepresentation. They took Mercury's caduceus in lieu of Asclepios' staff. They're different symbols. Asclepios' staff is one stick with one serpent, whereas Mercury's caduceus is Ida and Pingala wrapping around Sushumna with wings. Right? And the wings are, of course, the pineal gland and the awakening of the Agya Chakra. One who carries the staff of Mercury is verily
Kundalini yoga, right?
Kundalini, yes, Kundalini yoga. And Mercury is more about Kundalini yoga, about the ascension of energy through the psychic centers and the awakening of Agya. Yoga ends, arguably, when the eye opens, when Agya opens, which is represented by wings. And the wings mean transcendence, but more importantly, transcendence rooted in immanence. So when you carry the staff of Hermes, you are a magician. Hermes teaches magic, hence the eulogization or the euhemerization of the maybe Greek, maybe Egyptian historical figure Hermes Trismegistus. Now it's important, Imhotep is arguably an actual guy. You know, in Egypt, there's a great architect named Imhotep. In the series The Mummy, you know those movies with Brendan Fraser? Imhotep is like a bad guy, right? He's like the dark Egyptian sorcerer that kidnaps the woman, and then Brendan Fraser, the archaeologist, like Digman, has to go and rescue the woman from Imhotep. Same arc. Just like all Indian movies, all Bollywood movies are basically the Ramayana. Pretty much all movies, all stories are the hero's journey. You just replace the dragon with somebody, or Merlin with somebody, and Arthur with somebody. So Brandon Fraser is Arthur, and he goes and he kills Imhotep in order to rescue this woman who arguably would do better with Imhotep than with him. What does he have to teach? How to shoot a revolver? Imhotep, the god of ancient Egypt, has so much more to offer that woman.
How to write for him.
Imhotep can teach a language and a writing and a magic and a science that is a kind of science that we in post-Victorian urban society have no knowledge of. You see, they were able to do something that we cannot now replicate, even with the technology that we have. That's worth noting. I once met a Sufi master who said those Egyptian masters were all demigods, but they were bred through demons. And it's true. Those who you call demons, like Solomon knew better. Solomon knew that the demons were friends that could help him build a temple. But now we cut ourselves off from demons. And that means we cut ourselves off from Daimon, from Socrates' inspiration, from our quote-unquote higher guardian angel. What you call a demon, we call angels. And Patanjali is an angel. His literal name, Patanjali, Anjali, like the word angel, Anjali means offering. Patanjali means fallen offering. So if you take Pata and Anjali, literally Pata means fall, like Shaktipata. Anjali means offering, but it means angel. So Patanjali is a fallen angel. Like Lucifer. Bringer of light. He's the serpent. He's Lucifer. He's a fallen angel. And look, we have a mantra here in Indian society where we revere him as a teacher of what? Of yoga, to conquer the mind, like the staff of Hermes. To get magic is to conquer the mind. But also, magic is grammar. You know, it's very important. He who does not know how to use his words magically knows nothing of magic. Magic is spelling. And that's why with Tantra, we don't even care about your words. We care about the phonemic power of what you're saying, meaning we care about mantra. If you could say give, or you could say donate, the word donate is more likely to get money out of someone than give. Because da has the phonemic power of giving. Na means to negate. Right? So like when you use words, to use them magically is to speak with resonance, with musicality. And that's why musicians are feared by the church. Because musicians can do things to people's minds that even the greatest leaders cannot. And great leaders, the reason they're great is because of their oratory.
Like Madhyama in language.
Yes, Madhyama and Pashanti, the highest symbolic kind of archetypical language, when it expresses itself through Madhyama and ultimately through Vaikari, that's when a person has power. And a person cannot, in Madhyama or Vaikari, and she's using technical terms from the tantric understanding of the word, actually terms that come from before Tantra, from Shabda Brahmavada, from a different school that has since died out, which Patañjali is associated with, actually. So Patañjali, someone like Panini, someone like Bhartrahari, these are not tantrics, but their philosophies, Panini, Bhartrahari, Patañjali, their philosophies on grammar have greatly influenced tantric thought and practice. So we use their words, Vaikari, Madhyama, Pashanti, but we add something above that, Para.
So the grammar itself is Vaikari, the lyricism behind it would
No,
be
grammar is
Pashanti.
Madhyama. Vaikari is the physical expression.
Okay.
Grammar is the mental structure that orders and structures that physical expression, and that is informed by understanding of an archetypical reality. So grammar is actually metaphysically given, not conventionally contrived. So like with Samskrita, the word Samskrita means artificial, but it actually means something deeper than even a natural language. Because a natural language is something that humans create as a response to nature. Samskrita is nature itself. It's the language of the universe. And so Pythagoras will say it's math. And in computer science, we use something like Sanskrit, as Anandji was saying, that like Ashtadhyayi, we use that kind of thing to code computers. And look how much power, like Shunya Vahini through Minecraft can create and destroy worlds because of the power of coding. But the power of coding is basically just accessing primordial, ontologically given metaphysical structures. And that's what Patanjali is teaching, what Ashtadhyayi of Panini and what Vakpadya of Bhartrahari is trying to teach. It's trying to teach us divine language, grammar. That's why if you want to learn yoga, but you don't want to learn Sanskrit, that's fine, but you're learning only one of the three things that the Naga has to teach you. Nagarjuna is not going to teach you Buddhism until he first teaches you Sanskrit grammar. And he was a master of grammar, which is what allowed him to be a master of logic. You see, logic is ultimately just grammar. And if you were in a philosophy program, one of my favorite classes in my philosophy undergraduate program was the logic class, only because it was so funny. In the logic class, you meet the computer science kids and you meet the econs kids, and for the first time, all these like liberal arts majors are meeting all these like South Campus like science majors, and it's a really funny classroom. There are people in the back with their sunglasses because they're high as shit, and there are people in the front of the class trying to like study logic, and logic is like math. It's like something that you either get or you don't, and to get it, it means something, to be able to intuit logic really means something. Now, I had learned Sanskrit, so I was very lucky in my logic class where I never showed up to a single class. Then my professor was like, dude, you failed this class because you're going to be graded on your homework assignments, not just your final test. And I'm like, I'm gonna make a deal with you. I made a Luciferian deal with him. I said, if I get 100% on my final, like I literally am perfect in my final, you excuse all of my missed homework assignments. He did not believe that because I didn't do the homework, I would be able to like get 100%.
I did that in my classics class.
Because we're Indians, we can do shit like this, we can pull this off. And so I got my 100, and my Finnish professor had to be like, okay, fuck. He made a deal that he thought he was going to win on, but I had faith. I knew that I could do it, and I did it. And it was like one of my biggest flexes in school. Like I just didn't show up for this class at all, but it was logic. You see, and having learned Sanskrit grammar, I'm like, what is that to me? And it's symbolic logic. It's not like an LSAT or something like that. It's all symbol. It's basically math. But it's a deeper math than the kind of math that you do with numbers. It's the math that you do with letters. Knowing that numbers and letters are just symbols, and how to navigate symbols is what grammar is all about, what logic is all about. So you think Nagarjuna, the great alchemist, the master grammarian and logician, will teach you anything about Buddhism, anything about void, without first making sure that you are like logically sound? That's the problem today. Today we teach Advaita Vedanta, we teach very high levels of Buddhism, we teach Tantra to illiterate people, and this isn't an elitist claim that says, oh, you should learn Sanskrit. I'm just going to be very real with you. If you don't know Sanskrit, you don't know grammar, you don't know logic. And if you don't know logic, what power are you going to have? Like, logic is very important, and society is based on a practicality and a responsibility that is illogical. Like, it's illogical to give up your only, quote-unquote, non-renewable resource of time and energy to go to work for minimum wage. That's illogical. But we do illogical things all the time because we don't think, we don't reason. And learning grammar is the way to, like, clean up your mind. So, debating, arguing, like, speaking in structured sentences, and then having enough power to play with the structures of those sentences. Basically, learning how to code, but on a deeper level, is, I think, an entry-level requirement to learning Nagarjuna's Buddhism. So that's important. But you know what's even more entry-level? And this is why Nagas become very important, and we have to talk about Asclepios now, and medicine, and healing. If you have no life force, if you have no energy, if you're not healthy, how can you study? You won't be able to sit and focus and learn if you're in pain, if you're sick. And so the Nagas, one of their greatest blessings to a human being is to teach us medicine. And you cannot learn medicine without also learning the art of poisoning and intoxication. That's why I was really excited to meet your friend, because there's a great need. Could you pass me the cigarettes on the table? There's a great need for Rajasuya type Shaiva practice because it's waning. In India, we don't know how to work with mercury anymore. And we don't know how to work with substances, you know, like things from nature, like plants, herbs. So if you want to learn magic, the entry-level requirement is you understand why Tulsi is sacred to Vishnu, why Rudraksh is sacred to Shiva, why this gem is sacred to this deity. You have to look at gems and jewels and understand their energetic presence. You have to look at plants and understand their energetic presence. So, like, I like to eat nightshade. I really enjoy belladonna, you know, deadly nightshade. But before this, I like datura. Now, these are poisons, but they're only poisons to people who don't know how to work with them, who don't understand them. That's why I come to America and I see that everyone who does drugs, they're all addicts. They're all addicted to alcohol. They're all addicted to substances because, arguably, they don't have the blessing of the Nagas. They don't know how to. Thank you, Ma. No, there's like these Marlboros, I think, also. Marlboro Red 100 on the other side of that skull sensor. Thank you. Yeah, these I will have to roll, and I'm in the process of rocking, so rolling is for later. Thank you. Oh, thank you. So the Nagas, like Nagarjuna, the alchemist, they work with Bunsen burners and pipettes and burettes. Their laboratories are also their studies, and their studies are also their magical towers. So someone like Nagarjuna, when you picture him, whether or not he has a snake's tail, I don't know, but he's usually depicted like Patañjali as being half serpent, half man. He's someone who learned from the dragon. He's a disciple of the dragon. And what he probably is going to teach you first is the magic of herbs, the magic of medicine. So when you're ill, you need to know what the remedy is, physically speaking. So one thing that the Nagas will teach, and that's one reason why you should propitiate Nagas, and I'm going to give you some, as I did last time, pujas that you can do today and tomorrow, and maybe every day of your life to propitiate the Nagas. I actually have a contract with the Nagas. I made a deal with the Naga one time. I'll just like be candid about it. And I have to do a particular mantra and a particular thing every single day to propitiate my Naga, which I actually inherited from my mother. It's a Nagini, and I got it from my mother, who got it from her father. But it's an astral being, and some of people, thank you, Ma. Some people who are, of course, sensitive in that way, you'll see my Naga. But it might not appear as a serpent. It could appear as a black cloud or something like that. But that Nagini teaches me everything. She teaches me medicine. She teaches me what to eat and what not to eat. And often this shows up as like, when you're hungry, eat. When you're not hungry, don't eat. When you want to sleep, sleep. When you want to wake up, wake up. And that's not going to go very well with your boss and with your work and with your societal structures. Like, it's very difficult to do real medicine when every day your cortisol levels are so high because you're dealing with fears that aren't even real. Like, you're worried about something in the future that's not present in front of you now. And that's illogical and inane. And that's why people get sick all the time. Spirituality is literally a matter of life and death. And if you every single day, like, live your life the way you've been living your life, look around you and see how all the people who are living life just like you, look how sick they become. And the thing is, all the money that you make in your 20s and in your 30s, submitting yourself to the stressful urban environment of practicality, responsibility, and time-based thinking, all that money you make will probably be spent in your later years addressing your medical issues, which came about as a result of all that stress. You know, it's really funny. It's like, health is not that difficult, but we've made it difficult. There's a natural wisdom that the body has, which we cannot honor because we're thinking about how many hours of sleep we need and we're waiting for scientists to tell us. We're thinking about what diets we should have because we're waiting for the scientists to tell us. Someone like Nagarjuna, a Naga, can tell you, but it's always going to be different. What Nagarjuna might give you as medicine, he might say to someone else is poison. One person's poison is another person's cure, and it's always in dosage. That's why when people see the substances that I do, or the things that I eat or don't eat, or how I don't sleep, or things like that, when they see that and they try to imitate that, things won't go well for them. Because it works for me, it might not work for you. For you, if you drink one sip of liquor, you might become addicted, or you might not be able to meditate. But in my case, I can drink liquor, I can do this, and I can meditate. In fact, even better. So like that's going to be something that is individual and idiosyncratic, and medicine must always be individual and idiosyncratic. Because your needs, your swaprakriti, it's called in Ayurveda, your swaprakriti is unique to you. Your doshic kind of constitution is different from the next person. So how can you standardize or universalize or generalize healthcare? So if you're tired all the time, that's unnatural. You shouldn't be tired all the time. If you're sick all the time, that's also unnatural. If you don't feel good in your body, that's not right. You shouldn't accept that. You shouldn't just be like, oh, fine, my body is fucked. No, the Nagas can help. So the first thing that Nagas do, arguably, is teach you medicine. Malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena. He teaches medicine, or he teaches science. Vidhi or vaidya can mean like alchemy or science. He teaches science to remove the impurities of the body. You know, so Nagarjuna, you must remember, is a doctor. Patañjali is also a doctor. And Lord Shiva, one of his temples in North India, in Badrinath, there's a temple there called Vaidyanath. People who are sick, they go and visit Shiva as the Lord of Doctors, Vaidyanath. And so remember, if you're a doctor, you're a healer. And to heal the body, arguably, first you must heal the mind. And to heal the mind, first you must heal the spirit. So medicine, grammar, and yoga. It's a triplicity. It's a tripartite like system for living your best life. A lot of people go straight to yoga. Now, if you succeed at yoga, obviously you'll succeed in the mind. And if you succeed at the mind, you'll obviously succeed in the body. But a ladder that can be climbed this way, obviously can also be flipped. So it's fine if people want to go straight to Buddhism, if they want to go straight to yoga. The reason it often doesn't work, though, is because they haven't sorted things out on the level of the body and mind. So therefore, when you approach Nagas, maybe the first blessing you ask for, or the first one they'll give you, is energy, vitality, and more importantly, health. It should feel good to be in your body. So right now, just for fun, check in with the body. How does it feel on the physical level of your experience? You're not the body, but the body is an experience arising within you. And all I'm asking now is to assess that experience. What do you feel? Are you sleepy? Are you tired? Are you despondent, energetically speaking? Are you enlivened, awake? Do you feel
I
good?
feel compassion.
Nice. And you could say compassion for the body is like sleeping when it's sleepy, waking up when it wants to wake up, eating when it's hungry. So the question is, if you're hungry, why aren't you eating? And what will you eat? Something that you want to eat. Right? So having eaten and you're still hungry, eat more. And that's like a cue from the body. And arguably, the cues are all awry. Like we are hungry and we eat and we're not satisfied. Then the quality of the food. Why is it that the food is not satisfying my hunger? Or more importantly, why is it that food is not giving me energy? These are all questions that we ought to ask. And the answers might perplex you. You might think, oh, a sattvic diet of no onions and no garlic and no meat will make me feel more energetic. Or you might think, if I eat some richer meats like red meats or drink some wine, that'll be better for my blood. Now, there is no like cure-all statement here, because what will work for you today might not work for you tomorrow, and what works for you certainly doesn't work for the next person. So when you pray to Nagas, and I'll give you a puja that you can do to propitiate Nagas, it's kind of my specialty, but if you work with Nagas, if you pray to Nagas, if you befriend Nagas, and if you are so lucky to enlist a Naga or Nagini as your like a familiar or your constant, your daimon, if you will, the first thing you'll notice is that you're very energetic. You'll have a lot of energy, and you'll be very enlivened as a physical being even. And you'll find that you don't need medicines because you can intuit your own. And when you need, I'm not making a case against allopathic care. Please don't misunderstand me. When it's time to take medicines, because you know me. If something is quote unquote synthetic or unnatural, that is not a reason for me to disqualify it. It's not like, oh, I'm not going to take a vaccine, I'm not going to take medicine. Of course I took my vaccines. Plus, I'll take any medicine that a doctor gives me, because again, I don't think what a doctor prescribes is bad just because it's synthetic or coming from allopathic care. No, allopathy is great. And so is Ayurvedic alternative medicine, so is Chinese medicine, so is homeopathy. When Sri Ramakrishna got throat cancer, it was a homeopathic doctor, a very famous and very reputable homeopathic doctor that they hired in order to like cure his throat cancer, because we had more faith in Ayurveda, in homeopathy, and then we lost that faith, and it's slowly returning as we start to understand the limits of allopathic care. So again, don't misunderstand me. Allopathy and naturopathy can of course work together because it's non-dual. There's no difference. It's just this substance or that substance. Everything is natural. And an alchemist can make quote-unquote synthetic substances, but that's the glory of the alchemist. It's not like they're going out into nature and taking like a willow bark. No, they're taking the willow bark and processing it so it become aspirin. Like your ibuprofen, your aspirin, that's just a willow bark, but it's a willow bark activated through alchemical processes. So again, if you want to chew coca leaves, that's not going to give you a cocaine high. Those people in the Andes who like chew the raw like cocaine, like it's not just the leaf. You have to mix it with something else. There's like another substance that you have to eat the leaf with in order to get like that cocaine property, which could be life or death for somebody climbing a mountain who gets tired, who needs an energetic lift. So being healthy without substances is a very bad understanding of medicine. Health requires an exchange with nature, meaning you have to eat things that nature gives you and maybe eat the specific things that your nature requires. So it's not like, okay, I'm healthy because I don't do any drugs or I don't take any medicines. No, I'm healthy because I understand what medicines and what drugs work for me and which ones don't, and align myself with those natural forces that will support my natural expression of health.
Clarification. So Nagas give you energy not as like a direct thing, but through the knowledge of the substance.
I think so, yeah, and both, right? They give you energy, but that energy should not be understood as being like independent of nature.
Okay,
'Cause-
so energy of knowledge of how to acquire the energy.
Exactly,
But
like
not
how much.
the energy directly.
Sometimes directly.
Okay.
Like sometimes they just like bless you with energy.
Okay.
They revitalize you. Like when you're trying to lift a car to save your child. Maybe it's like a Naga type energy that gives you strength to do it, but they know that's not sustainable.
Right.
Rather than giving you energy, they give you knowledge.
I
That's
see.
what I've noticed this about Nagas. They like all Luciferian forces. They respect sovereignty and autonomy. So if they can give you a gift, that's fine. But the gift they really like to give is knowledge. They want to see you know what they know and apply it in your realm.
Right.
So they are in a deeper like part of the subconscious mind. They're in like this like loka where everything is energetic. So when they look at our realm, they see everything in terms of energy. So they see a different realm. When they give you knowledge, that knowledge then inspires and illumines your vision of plants and minerals. So you don't need a Jyotish Pandit to tell you what to wear. You just suddenly feel like, I kind of want to have copper on my skin. I don't know why. I just feel like drinking out of a copper bottle or something. And they might actually supply the copper. They might make a substance appear, and that substance might not even be of this world. So a lot of drugs, like the lysergic acid or whatever, might have been a gift of a Naga to this Albert Hoffman or something. You know, so like a lot of drugs.
Like Adderall probably is.
I think so. Like the gift of the Naga can come in the form of a herb, a substance, a mineral, and often it's all those three combined. The minerals are in the water, and they show you what water to drink, what water not to drink. The Nagas have this gift of medicine and health that, you're right, more often than not comes in the form of knowledge about nature. And I think if you have a Naga on your side, like, you will naturally move towards those things that are going to be helpful and nourishing, and naturally avoid the things that won't be. And yes, I think also generally speaking, that aside, you'll have just fortitude. You'll be a person of endurance, and maybe even weirdly like strength. You'll be able to lift things. You know, you'll be able to like put up with endurance tests. So a Naga or a Nagini, Kundalini, one of the first experiences of a Kundalini awakening, a lot of people describe this as a kind of insomnia. They just don't sleep. Sri Ramakrishna did not sleep for like years. But that's because the point of sleep is to reconnect with a realm of energy that reinvigorates the body. If the Naga is here with you, that energy is so palpable and present. Now, the problem comes when people try to imitate this without actually having access to the energy. So they just stay up. But no, if you're sleepy, you should sleep. The thing about Kundalini awakening, though, is that if she's awake and moving within you, you might weirdly not want to. And it's not because you're doing drugs, you're not on meth or something. You're just weirdly, like, alive. And you want to stay up. And the Sufis in Turkey, back in the day, they would smuggle coffee. Coffee was a banned substance. Just like so many things are banned now, back then coffee was banned. So they would smuggle coffee. And the reason they drank coffee a lot of times is because they wanted to stay up all night discussing the Quran. Now it's not that they wouldn't have been able to stay up all night discussing the Quran without coffee. Of course, the ideas of the Quran were so inspiring that they could stay up just through enthusiasm and excitement. There was so much Shakti already. But just because of that Shakti doesn't mean they like avoid coffee. In fact, that Shakti, its expression is the recognition of coffee as being an aid, and then the ability and the finesse and the cunning to somehow bring it in, and also I think the boldness. That's the kind of Luciferian thing. They saw a substance that would help them in their all-night discussions of the Quran, and they were willing to break the law in order to get that substance. I'm not saying you should break the law, but the influence of the Nagini can sometimes be so empowering that you're willing to do things that would help you, even if all of society says that's not something you should do. If there's something you shouldn't do, and all of society, can you like this again? All of society says you shouldn't do it, wow, lucky for you. The thing that you want, that nourishes you, is also something that's not available. Sorry, the thing that you don't want, which doesn't nourish you, is also something that's not available because it's illegal or societally frowned upon. Good, no problem. And if the thing that you want is societally approved of and legal, also good for you. The problem is when you're in the middle. When there's something, thank you Ma, that society might hate, and maybe so much so that it's like illegal, and yet it's good for you. That's when I think the influence of Naginis can be a little problematic, because then you, like a Sufi, might try to smuggle coffee into Istanbul so you can obey the rule of the Nagini or the Naga. And so health, energy, vitality, this is what Asclepios is responsible for, and Asclepios is the god of medicine, is naturally a Naga. Patañjali also, the first thing he teaches, although it says yogena, but the first thing in the Stotram is yoga. Arguably the entry level requirement for being a yogi or for being a student of these arts is health. And arguably our health has deteriorated. Even with advances in medical science, the diseases that we have now are new diseases. Even if you think about like AIDS and stuff like that, like these are things that are very modern and contemporary that our ancestors might not have known about. Yeah, they had syphilis and gonorrhea. It's true that they would die from syphilis. Like there were obviously STDs in the ancient world. But weirdly enough, there was also medicine in Egypt and medicine in Greece that could do things that even our modern medicine cannot, and that didn't need to do what our modern medicine does now because it didn't have the illnesses that we have now. So we have forsaken the Nagas.
That's prevalent in society.
People are tired.
Sedentary, yeah, just the tiredness.
They come home and they just watch TV, and like when they watch a show on TV, they like get hypnotized by the show, and they're not energized and inspired by the show. They're not like accessing a mythological realm of ideas through the show. They're just like hypnotizing themselves with easy
like
gratification. Numbing. Yeah, people are numbing, and that's why when I see people doing drugs and stuff, a lot of times it's to numb themselves to something they don't want to feel. Whereas the Sufi who's drinking coffee is not trying to escape or avoid, they're trying to intensify. They're trying to reach through breaching even. They're breaching physical limits and learning from the Nagas that physical limits are limits in imagination, not actual physicality. So Nagas expand our understanding and our intellect, but they expand our imagination and they reveal what we thought was impossible, and they show us that it is possible, but sometimes to make it possible requires medicines, minerals, requires plants, requires quote-unquote synthetic derivatives of plants and minerals. So they're alchemists, Nagas, and they teach alchemy. And Bhavatri Rani, you look very good. That's a nice look. So Nagas, they teach this science, but they also arguably teach makeup. Because to make makeup, you have to like grind, like say you want to make kajal or something. That kohl or that kajal to darken the eyes, you learn it sometimes through like medicine as well. And they have medicinal properties. Sometimes your makeup is not just aesthetic. It serves a ritual, magical, and maybe even medicinal property. So there's like, you can see a sort of liminal space between medicine, between poisoning and intoxicant. So if you know how to work with substances, you can learn intoxication, you can learn poisoning, and you can learn medicine. These three come together. The witch that cures can also kill, but by virtue of her knowledge of substances. So that's why alchemists are sometimes detested, because they poison and they create drugs. So it's very rare that a Rajasuya practitioner, the Shaiva alchemist, is also not versed in drugs and in poisons. Those three things come together. And of course the best use of their art, and they've often mainly used their art in this way, is to give people cures. for physical ailments. So when you go and see a shaman, I mean, the vast majority of things that the shaman does is physical in nature. They give you a mantra or they give you a puja in order to give you physical health, because that's the first issue that we have as human beings. So later when I give you the sadhana for the Nagas and the Naginis and whatnot, one way to know that you're making progress in the sadhana is just checking your energy levels, checking your physical vitality, checking your overall general health. Age is immaterial, by the way. People always say, oh, because I'm this age, therefore it's okay for me to be sick. No, what is age? My God, our ancestors used to live to hundreds of years old. Taralanga Swami, 280 years old by British records, meaning he's much older by Indian imagination. And like, we all have grandmothers, don't we, who lived past 100? I mean, of course, they lost their birth certificates. Like, aging is quite difficult. But I had a grandmother who was well past 100s, vital and lively and joyous. Of course, when I was young, I didn't like her. I was scared of her. She would always be in the kitchen, and she loved me to death, and she would always like kiss me and kiss me and kiss me. Of course, as a kid, I didn't like to be held and kissed, but how sad that as a child I didn't understand the depth of that wisdom. But she was there in the house. We all know of people in our culture who are like well past their hundreds, and even my 80-year-old, 90-year-old grandmother, my 80-year-old grandmother, she's just a politician now, like wandering about doing her NGOs and trying to get votes for her, you know, like true Kshatriya in a sense, always like starting organizations, and she's vital, she's alive, and people always say she looks so young. Even my mother, a lot of people are like, wow, she looks like your sister. Yeah, my mother looks really young. My grandmother also looks really young, and I look way younger than my age. We say that's a gift of Sri Vidya, but you can also say it's a gift of the Nagas. They give you like perpetual youth in a sense. So don't think age has anything to do with this. Sickness is unnatural, and I don't care what your transcendentalist traditions tell you, the logic of the Nagas is that there is medicine, there is science, there is art, and that will help you not only be strong and healthy, but also beautiful. So that brings us to the next thing. There's a kind of like interstitial space, not just between medicine, drugs, and poisons, but now think between the body and the mind. There's an interstitial space, and that's where aesthetic and beauty resides. So aesthetic is allowing concepts and ideas in the mind to influence the presentation of the body. So what clothes you wear and what makeup you wear or don't wear, how you present yourself in society, how you walk, how you move, how you like hold your shoulders, that's all in the mind expressing through the body. So a person whose mind is beautiful, imaginative, enlivened, refined, that will pervade through their body, and when they show up at the venue, when they pull up to the function, they will naturally exude a charisma and magnetism. So like sexual like prowess, like charisma, like personality, that has very little to do with actual physical features. You know, it has very little to do even with the dress that you wear, although the dress that you wear can be influenced by this. It has very little to do with what kind of makeup, if at all, you use. But often, the Nagas and Naginis will also, like Azazel, teach the art of beauty, beautifying the eyes, beautifying the lips. Basically, again, using substances, things in the world, to make one more attractive. That's where I want to draw a parallel to the witches in medieval Europe. Belladonna, notice, is a poison. You can use it to kill people. It's also a medicine. You can use it as an analgesic, like you would use Tiger Balm or Vicks or something like that. But also, it's used for beauty. You know, the reason it's called belladonna is because the witches would apply it to the corner of their eyes, and then the effect of the belladonna would make their eyes widen. And wider eyes are, of course, considered more attractive, because eyes that are wide, like dilated pupils, present a kind of enlivenment. Like, your eyes are only wide when you're relaxed. They become narrow when you're stressed. When you're in fight or flight, your shoulders hunch, you kind of become tighter. And by the way, when you're a hunter, the last thing you want to do is have the deer notice you before you kill it. Because if the deer sees you about to shoot the bow, it will tighten up, preparing to run, and that meat is almost impossible to eat. You have to kill in stealth in order to get nice juicy meat. So similarly, why would you have sex with that thing which is tense and tight and curmudgeon-y? Just like you would only eat meat that is loose, you would also only want to like mate with or have sex with that which is relaxed and comfortable. And more importantly, when you think about society, a lot of it is based on the reptilian primordial urge to fuck or to eat. Whenever you see someone, these two impulses arise first. Do I kill it or do I kiss it? To kill or to kiss are the only two like primordial instincts. And that's what I'm saying, like those of you who are afraid of this truth, who are afraid of their deeper, baser urges, who need language and society to like dress up your killing and your kissing in the form of friendship and family and societal obligations, like you're not ready for the teaching of the Nāgas. It's a primordial teaching. It's a teaching that you have to be like really open to. So that's why if you need to justify yourself or explain your urges, they won't like that. They'll be like, what? I'm trying to teach you medicine. I'm trying to teach you the art of poisoning and the art of drugs. And I'm trying to teach you beauty, and you have all these hang-ups. No, get out of my realm. You haven't gone underwater yet. You're standing on the surface of the water hoping the Naga from his underwater realm will somehow convey to you. No, you have to go to the house of the Nagas, like the Mahabharata Pandavas. So anyway, in the house of the Nagas, you enter the reptilian brain and you come into contact with all these primordial urges. But because you're a human, the thing is, you can learn this stuff and apply it in a civilizational way, like Nagarjuna, who was a respected and revered teacher, but a dragon nonetheless. Right, so we learned that. Killing and kissing, and then we have our societal constructs around justifying those two things. The Naga will teach you both things, how to kill and to kiss. And then when you present yourself to society, you might be the kind of thing that nobody wants to kill, because they see from the way you carry yourself, they see your dress, they see your makeup, and they think, I don't think I can win that fight. Or they see and they think, I want to align myself with that Shakti, meaning your desire to mate with it, which means make a business deal with it, be its friend, have it be part of your tribe, or fight a war that this person is going to fight, or be their sexual romantic partner. All of that is something the Nagas give. So they give physical strength and vitality. They give magnetism and charisma or sexual prowess. And that's, I think, most of what people want from the Nagas. Most people are satisfied with this. When the Nagas can do this for you, your life is good and sweet and simple and easy. Now, that's why a lot of people are afflicted in this way, often because in their life or in their past lives or in their family, people have killed serpents. They have transgressed against the symbol of Asclepios. You could argue that all of Odysseus's troubles are actually his fault, right? And he admits to this because he transgressed Athena. Of course, Poseidon is going to be mad at him, and Athena's not going to protect him. Like, civilization is not going to protect one who, in an uncivilized and brutish way, disguised an attack as an offering. The Trojans were right to bring the horse in. They were right to offer it to the temple of whoever, the Poseidon or Athena or whatever. And these Greeks were wrong for transgressing the temple of Athena, for transgressing civilizational structures. He has to pay a penance for that. Similarly, if you have what we call sarpa dosha, meaning you have killed a snake, and by the way, you don't have to kill a physical snake. You can totally transgress the Nagas by never once having met a physical snake, but often it's from developing. You know, my great-grandfather, like, he got beheaded by Kapalikas because he was a developer. He was like creating properties and things, and there was a forest, and my, I think, grand-auntie, no, this is my great-grandfather, my grand-auntie was there for this. The Naga Babas, or the Kapalikas, they came out of the jungle and they said to him, do not cut our trees. You can develop wherever you want, but you cannot develop this land. The jungles are where we stay and where we do our worship. He didn't give a fuck. In the name of money, he razed the jungle down to the ground, and the Nagas came in the form of these Kapalikas, and they beheaded him in front of my grand-auntie. And like, in a sense, the family is kind of happy about this because he paid off his sarpa dosha, you know. He gave his life as an offering, or rather his life was taken from him in a very literal way for transgressing the Nagas, so we paid our debt. And not only did we pay our debt through the decapitation of one of my great-grandfathers, we also paid our debt in the form of my grandfather on my maternal side, who died in the temple of Nagama. So we have this like snake thing in our family where we transgress them and then we propitiate them. And so much of my family lineage feels like a metaphor for civilization. So much of our life is just the hero's journey playing out in a microcosmic sense. And that's when we'll come to Kundalini and talk about her as Kula Kundalini, as our microcosmic Naga. Each and every one of us already has a Naga, but now I'm talking about maybe the Nagas and Naginis of this underwater Loka. Okay, anyway, you can, if you want tonight, pray to the Nagas and Naginis and ask that you be allowed into their realm in your dreams.
What if you kill a snake for self-defense?
That's a good question. I mean, first of all, you would never need to. If you have the blessing of the Nagas and Naginis, snakes will be kind and chill. Then of course it's acceptable to kill the snake. I don't think I ever could. Like, I could never wish violence upon the snake. I love snakes. Like, I'll show you all those pictures where like I have all these like snakes around me, but a lot of it was because I chanted a mantra and the snakes liked the sound of the mantra and they came and wrapped around me, and then I could feel them relax. At first they were tense. They were like, what is this? But then once I started chanting the mantra that I'll share with you in a bit, it might not have even been the words. It could have been any mantra, I'm sure, but I chanted all my Naga mantras and I could feel them relax. And I used to have a snake here. And I didn't put the snake in any kind of it would just be free. And I would see it wrapped around my guitars, and I would feed it the mice every day, and it was great. I loved my snake, and my old roommate, the snake went with my roommate because she was very fond of it. But having snakes is important. For Naga Babas, for Naga Sadhus, like their understanding of serpents are different. They don't keep snakes with them. But for one who wants to get the blessing of Nagas and Naginis, it's not necessary that you have a snake, but it can help. If you feed a snake, if you care for a snake, that is one way to propitiate the symbolic influence of the Nagas and Naginis. So yeah, if you have a snake in front of you and you feel afraid, your fear of the snake will cause it to attack you. And then of course, now you're already in a karma. Your fear has caused aggression and violence. Your killing of it was perfectly just to protect yourself, but now you have sarpadosha. You know,
What
so
about the people who are like have bad phobias that they can't even look at pictures of snakes?
yeah, I know, and then that's definitely a Naga kind of thing, right? It's like they're probably also going to have some health issues, or they're going to have some energy issues, or like issues with their femininity, with their sexuality, and maybe even issues with their grammar and logic. And definitely when it comes to spirituality, they might be challenged in certain ways. Obviously you can do spirituality, happy Nāga Pañcamī, obviously you can do spirituality without the blessing of the Nagas or Naginis. You don't need Nagarjuna or Patañjali or Abhinavagupta. You can do it in other ways. There are other beings, Gandharvas, Apsaras, Vidyadharis. But I make a case for Nagas and Naginis almost anecdotally. I'm like, they're kind of awesome. They're so awesome. And I love Patañjali, I love Abhinavagupta, I love Nagarjuna. And oh my god, the things that they taught us yesterday, like, it might also be like karmic, like you might have lives before where you were closer to them, or you might yourself be incarnating into this world from Naga Loka. You know, so like many of us have associations with Nagas, either through our family lineage, our past lives, or our present life, which would probably make it so that you never killed a snake or were afraid of a snake. And in fact, we're only helped and benefited by snakes. So, Nagas, Naginis. If you think of them in this more like Vedic cosmological way, they have a loka, like a dream loka, and there might not even appear to be crocodiles or snakes or dragons in that loka. Do you know? Yeah. Do you know in Spirited Away, there's that spirit, Haku, right? And he forgot his name. He lost his mantra. He's trapped in this loka because he can't access his own loka because he lost his mantra. When he gets his name, Go Haku, he is the spirit of that river. And the girl who ends up in that loka, her friend is Haku, her guide, her mentor, her friend. So she has a relationship with the Naga, and that Naga is also looking for his own liberation. So the thing about Nagas, the one thing you should understand is they are demigods, or they are semi-divine beings. So they're not deities in the sense of Kali. They're not really ghosts either, because they're not bhutas, they're not in this realm, they're not bhu-oriented. They're somewhere in between. They're in this interstitial space. So arguably, we, Kapalikas, Agoras, we have this kind of logic where, like, if you want to get to God, which is such a deep part of the ocean, it's like at the bottom of the ocean, the subconscious core, you have to transverse a lot of realms. So you can barge into those realms and fight and kill and try to fight your way to God. Or you can just be a little more tactful. You can make friends with these beings. And what they have to teach you will help you at every step of your journey. So allowing everything to be Shiva is allowing for even things that you would otherwise think are dark and dangerous to be teachers. And allowing the darkness and the danger of life to teach you is something you can even apply in this world psychologically. You can see everything in your life as a teacher. And if you're able to do that, when you start questing, when you take up the spiritual quest in earnest, and you enter into the dark night of the soul, you enter into the subconscious realm, your instinct then when you meet Nagas is not to be afraid of them. When you see a cloud of light or a cloud of shadow and it tries to teach you something, you'll listen. And then you'll be surprised. What they have to teach you is actually very beautiful and of course dangerous, because what they give you is power. And so if you become really healthy and really energetic, I mean, imagine what harm you could do to yourself and others. Think about someone like Mao Zedong or Hitler. You know, when the Dalai Lama met Mao Zedong and he was asked about what he felt about Mao Zedong, he said he was a man of impossible charisma. He had great magnetism. He was an energetic person. You think Hitler or Mao slept a lot? My God, they were awake, planning, conspiring, building, and they were quote-unquote successful in their version of their project. But, I mean, the blessing of the Naga ultimately can facilitate things like that, things like the Holocaust, things like Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward. They can make a god of you on earth. And not all gods mean well. But we are Shaktas, we worship power. So we say Nagas, they give power, first as physical health. Shakti is manifest as health and as energy, then as beauty. Shakti is also beauty. And again, your beauty standards in any period of your cultural experience, whether it's like in the time of the 13th century, where the bigger you were, the more beautiful you were, because it meant you were wealthy and you had access to food. Or the 90s heroin chic, where you have to look gaunt and skinny and pale, only then you're considered beautiful. It doesn't even matter what society says beauty is. Societal beauty standards that they print on magazines is not beauty, and it can be beauty. I mean, there's no reason why someone who fulfills the beauty standards of their culture can't be beautiful. But you have to remember, the Nāgas and the Nāginis give you a beauty that sometimes goes against your societal, cultural understanding of beauty. So you could just appear in front of someone and appear as not the ideal of that culture's standards of beauty, and they will still find you beautiful. And they might be confused by it. They might be like, oh my God, why am I attracted to this person when they aren't at all my type, or they aren't at all like what society says is beautiful? So beauty, energy, these are powers, and the Nāgas and Nāginis give you that. But you know what's even more powerful? And this is actually why I'm feared on the internet. Like, a lot of people are afraid of me because of intelligence, articulation, and eloquence. When you look at Lord of the Rings, there's like this beautiful moment where Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are all in this forest, and they think Saruman is there, this like dark, evil wizard. And they hear the footsteps, they see the light, and they're like, beware, the wizard, do not let him speak, lest he put a spell on us. So they want to attack him before he even gets a chance to speak, because if he speaks, they're fucked. So speaking, being able to persuade, being able to reason is a gift of the Nāgas and Nāginis too. It's a gift for you because you can reason out your own actions, but it's a gift in the sense that you gain power over others. Because if you're logically tight, you know, people can't really argue with you because very quickly they see that you know better, or very quickly they see that you've sorted your mind out better, and they come up against the fortress of your logic and they're defeated. Or you storm the slipshod fortress of their logic and you raid it, you destroy it, raze it to the ground, because the sheer force of your persuasion and logic is something that can change civilizations, you know. The oratory of someone like a Hitler or a Mao Zedong might not be based in logic, it's based in sentiment. There's like an animal magnetism that comes from such a preacher or such a teacher. Like, think of Little Richard, or, you know, Lil Richard, like the preacher rock star. Like, there are preachers and you see them in your mega churches. Like, they might not actually be saying logical shit, but what they're saying, they say with such force and such power that you are swept away by their sentiments. And if you don't have your own power, they will subjugate you with theirs. So it's almost like a Hegelian master-slave dialectic here, where it's like, if you aren't sorted in your mind, someone will do it for you. If you want healthy, someone will take advantage of that. If you want beautiful, someone's beauty will have power over you. So you must be healthy, energetic, beautiful, and logically sorted. That's what the Nāgas will give you. Power. But notice, what is power? Sovereignty. Being your own master. So logic. Someone like Nagarjuna or Patañjali will then, after teaching you medicine and poison and drugs, they will then teach you logic, which looks like grammar actually. Knowing words, knowing how to use words, knowing what bijas have what resonance. So it's logic, but a magical kind of logic, a kind of spelling, if you will. I don't trust the tantric who doesn't sing. I don't trust the tantric who doesn't speak and who uses words carelessly, you know. And the problem is, right, what looks like lying to the Nāgas is subtlety. You know what I mean? It's like there's a way to phrase things, and lawyers do this all the time. People who write contracts do this all the time. There's a way to phrase things where you don't lie. But a person who is dumb doesn't see what you're saying and signs a contract that they would otherwise not sign. That's the thing about fairies. Gandharvas, Apsaras, Nāgas, they're masters of speech. And so they know just how to phrase things. But they're not lying. So a lot of people are like, oh, he's lying. No. I'm just too subtle for you. Yeah, Ashwatman iti gajaha. Exactly. So that's a very Nāga kind of coded lesson of like, no, don't lie. By the way, if you lie, if you say something that you know is untrue, as a tantric, oh my God, that's going to wreck your power. Like, we all know how much power you get after 12 years of telling the truth. But if you guilelessly and stupidly just tell the truth in stupid, like, gross language, that's not very skillful. The thing about words is they're slippery. You can never really tell the truth. Because the truth is wordless. It's Brahman. The only thing that's true is Brahman, and you can't speak about Brahman. Everything else is, if you want to take Advaita Vedanta seriously, avidya. So the Nāgas and Nāginis, their teaching is feared because it makes the body stronger and therefore makes you more attached to it. It gives you more energy and more beauty, therefore makes you more attached to the world because you're more successful in the world. And it gives you logic and guile, which allows you to then use your mind to reify and justify things that maybe you would do better giving up. So that's why I think in many traditions, the Nagas and Naganis are seen as dragons to either be killed or kept at distance. Don't listen to what the snake has to say, lest it offer you sovereignty, will, and power. Remember, non-Shakta lineages don't see power the way that we do. They see power and they see a problem. They'll say things like power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We say the opposite. We say weakness corrupts. Those who are harmful and dangerous are those who feel weak that need to feel strong by making others feel weak. So if you are powerful, what will you take from anyone? If you are powerful, you, like the Nagas, will only give. And that's why I love Nagas, because they always give, and the reason they give is because they're powerful beings. Dragons. So in Spirited Away, this woman is lucky because she fell into a river. Again, just like the Mahabharata and the Pandavas who fall underwater and who are taken into refuge by the Nagas. Just like the Leviathan at the bottom of the ocean. Just like that, this young girl falls into a river. And she said she felt a spirit in the river protect her. The Naga saved her life, right?
Achilles in the river Styx.
Exactly. Like the Nagas in the river, like you get the same myth, right? What's that story? I forgot.
So the heel was the part that the mother was holding him from, and then he's invincible because he dipped his entire body,
But his heel was not dipped. That's so beautiful. And by the way, when Aghoris wear their serpent, we have like a symbol. It's a serpent. A lot of people wear it around their arms, but we often wear it around the left ankle. Weirdly, almost a reference to Achilles. It's almost a claim, like a weird like Vaidya claim about like the body and about maybe things in the body that might, even if you go in the river, not really get the influence of the river. So you wear your serpent bracelet on your left ankle. It grounds you, protects you. And even in wedding, you get a ring around your toe, a toe ring. It's like very similar actually, the toe ring and the like circle of snakes around your left ankle, or a ring of serpents. They're all the blessing of the Nagas. So like this is a symbol of the protection of the Nagas and Naginis, which looks like health, energy, knowledge about plants and herbs and minerals, knowledge about medicine, synthetic or non-synthetic, intuition about what to eat, what not to eat, all that. It also looks like beauty. One gains physical beauty from the blessing of the Nagas, but it also looks like logic and grammar. You would be a good debater, a good persuader. You'd be able to sign contracts skillfully. You'll be able to recognize a bad deal when you see one. And you won't quickly call things out as lies and guile and deceit just because you don't understand them. That's what happens to wizards. People see them and see their powers, and immediately because of their power think they are evil. And they have to be arguably the thing that you project upon them.
And then what keeps you from misusing the powers that you get?
The Nagas, that's the thing about Nagas and Naginis, they absolutely don't have the same set of morals. Like, they don't care actually how you use powers because their realm is different from ours. So like, when you die as a physical body, in this realm, they'll say that's a great tragedy. The Nagas don't actually see your physical death as a death. So they don't actually think killing or dying is a problem. Like Sri Krishna says to Arjuna in the beginning of the Gita, he who thinks he is the slayer and he who thinks he is slain, both are ignorant of the truth, O Partha. But he's seeing from a different realm, you know? Like he's like, I have become time, Kala, Kalosmi. I am time, destroyer of worlds. In truth, Arjuna, all these people have already been killed by me without you even participating. The Nagas see things in that way. So what you in your society consider immoral or wrong, they might not share that. What they consider wrong is weakness, or like a lack of respect, a lack of politeness. But what politeness looks like in that realm, in the fairy realm, so to speak, can be different from what politeness looks like here.
How do you tread that path where you're using your powers for the better? Better being a very subjective term.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't have an answer to that question. I can only deal in power. I can only give you power. I can never tell you how to use it. I never would, because you're a free being. However you want to use that power will delight me. You know, if you use your knowledge to kill, to cure, to poison, to heal, if you use your power to get intoxicated, if you use your beauty to subjugate others, if you use your beauty to inspire others, nothing could matter to me. Like, all that matters is that you're healthy, you're inspired, you're beautiful, you're logically sound, and you have Shakti on every level. Nagas are like that. They just want to see you powerful, and they leave it at that. You know, so then you work it out in the context of your own society. You all have your own like swadharmas, your own goals, and the power will just help you in that goal. Even if it's like a Hitlerian, Maoist kind of thing, the Nagas just want you to finish that karma. and whatever karma you have is associated to the karmas other people have, and the karmic just cycle going on and working itself out. That's not the Naga's concern. It's like maybe Shani's concern, and he's like as a graha a little higher up in the hierarchy. So you can by the way establish a hierarchy, and the Abhinavagupta Paramarthasara does that actually. It lists all the worlds, Prajapati Loka being one of the highest. God is there, by the way, in Prajapati Loka, and we killed God. So the Nagas, they don't think in terms of karma, but their work is still kind of part of the whole because it helps people work out karmas. Where Shani will always be there to kind of like mitigate your power. Shani will be like, oh, you think you're so powerful? Watch this motherfucker, and then set a boundary. And then you can go back to the Nagas, and there are limits to what the Nagas can do also. But that being said, the limits are far ahead of us. So what they can do is give you intellect, logic. So the way to do this, arguably, is to contact Nagas yourself, and we'll suggest a puja in just a bit. Or, remember that the Nagas are already trying to contact you. Abhinavagupta has written works, Patañjali has written works, study their works. Huh? Nietzsche has written works. All the disciples of the dragon, whether they are priestesses of Delphi who never write anything down, like they have all said and spoken and expressed things that have either been written down by them or by people who are inspired by them. So like thankfully, you never have to do Naga Puja, nor do you have to know how to enter into dream realms and go into Nagaloka if you can just sincerely study Patanjali, if you can sincerely study Abhinavagupta. It's not enough just to read the Yoga Sutra. You should study his grammar also. You should study his medicine. And a lot of those works, unfortunately, have been eclipsed by the popularity of his Yoga Sutra and thus lost. But here's the thing, if you can do yoga, if you master Patanjali yoga, you're going to be really successful, because if you get that power on the level of the mind to concentrate, by the way, the game is very simple. Choose a thought, any thought. What does a fishmonger say to the magician? Pick a cod, any cod. So choose a thought, any thought. It could be the thought of a cod. See how long you can hold it in your mind. You'll realize that if you cannot hold it for more than 12 seconds, if you cannot hold it, you need yoga. And Patanjali will teach you yoga. But it takes power. It takes a very subtle strength to keep your mind on something. So in the course of this lecture, I'm keeping my mind on something, but because I'm so sure of that, I can go wherever I want. I can let my mind whiplash me to this idea, to that idea. I can swim freely in the chaotic realm of my subconscious and just channel where the fuck I want to channel, knowing full well that anytime I want, I can return to the central theme. And so that's yoga. That's Patanjali concentration. But because of that yoga, then you can do logic. Because of that logic, because of your mental cleanliness, your body also will be pranically aligned, and therefore you'll be healthy and revitalized. So Nagarjuna, Patanjali, Abhinavagupta, they are like incarnations. So if you look at that verse again, it says Yogena Chadasya Padena Vacham, and I'll put the verse in the description of this video. Malam Sharirasya Chavaidya Yopa Karutamam Pravaram Muninam. He's a muni, a rishi, a sage. So we don't look at Lucifer or the serpent and say they're demons. We can still learn from fallen angels, and we call them sages. Patanjali, Pranjali Ranatosmi. Yoga for the mind, grammar for the speech, medicine for the impurities of the body. Do you see how Buddhistic this is? Body, speech, mind. I offer body, speech, mind. Even Shankara in his Vrtta Smaranam Stotram, Vrtta Smaranam Hridisam Spuradatma Tattvam. He says, I offer mind, and then he offers speech, and then he offers body. 3 verses, and the 3 verses are a dedication of mind, speech, and body to reality, to God. So we say, yoga for the mind, grammar for the speech, medicine for the body. I bow to that great sage Patanjali who has given me all of these. He's pure spirit, incarnate in form, holding a conch, discus, and sword. The conch and discus are associated to Vishnu. The sword is interesting though. This sword is Asi, it's called. So he has chakrasi, he has chakra and sword. So the sword is a symbol for discernment, and you'll see the yoginis also have swords. They have kadagas or asis. Swords are important. And swords are different from tridents, and tridents are different from axes. So the kind of weapon, or scythe in Viranatha's case, the kind of weapon that you have, astrally it might show up as a sword or as an axe, but it kind of depicts the quality of the being. So you can tell the being by the danda. Does he carry a club or a staff? Or does he carry a trishul? Or does he carry a spear? These are all indications of what family of yogini this person belongs to, or what, like, jati it's called, what species of astral being this being belongs to. So asking the right person for the right thing is a skill that you learn in the astral. You learn not to ask Nagas for things that Nagas can't give. Similarly, you can't ask me for morality. I can't give that. It's not my vidhi. It's not what I'm made for, you know. So a Naga or Nagini gives power, does not give judgments or moralizing. But other beings can. There are Vidyadharis who are more like legalistic, Brahma Rakshasas, that can like think about karma and like work on the level of Shani and tell you contractually what to do and what not to do. So that being said, we bow to that great sage Patanjali. He's pure spirit. We understand that everything is Shiva. And he's pure spirit holding conch, discus and sword. I bow to Patanjali, who is Sahasra Shirasam Shvetam, who is the 1,000-headed serpent, or the 1,000-headed white cobra. So if you look at symbols of Patanjali in Indian like iconography, they're quite rare, but he has like a serpent's tail, and sometimes he's sitting under the hood of a cobra. Even Buddhaji, you'll see that Jains and Buddhists, they have this love for Patanjali, and they've assimilated into Buddhism and Jainism the symbol of the 5-headed cobra, which is sheltering the Buddha actually. You know, he's like, not kill the serpent, he's housed by the serpent, sheltered by the serpent. So the flaring hood of the cobra is very much like the outstretched wings of the caduceus of Hermes. And the serpent coiled around Asclepios' staff is an awakened Kundalini that has ascended. So Asclepios, he's a serpent god, he's a Naga also. You know what's interesting? Every time I put tobacco in here, it disappears. Not because I'm spilling it. I don't think I've spilled that much. But who knows? Okay, so I'm getting to the end of this. Let me see. Next claim, we have Abhinava Patanjali. Okay, so Nagas give you logic. But now they give you something even higher. Not necessarily spiritual knowledge, but they give you magic, which is not the same as Vidya, but in the Tantric world, it's conflated. Kali Vidya is not necessarily Kali Darshan, nor is it necessarily the attainment of Kali as like a spiritual ideal. It could just be the power that Kali gives. And the Nagas and Naginis, they give you Vidya, but arguably of a magical sort. So when you get yoga, it's not necessarily the case that concentration of mind will give you God. The claim is yoga is a path to spiritual realization, but it's not necessarily only going to be used for that. You can use concentration to start a business, to start a genocide, to establish an empire or tear one down. You can use concentration to like help you not think about things you don't want to think about, or to like really focus on things you want to learn more about. In the Yoga Sutra, there's like a lot of siddhis that are being offered. Of course, Patanjali, he says something very scientific. He says, these siddhis will not help you attain God. Now, people read that shit and they're like, oh, so they're bad. Fuck you. Just because a tool doesn't give you an outcome doesn't make the tool bad. Why should everybody want the same outcome? So, siddhis don't negate spiritual realization, but they also don't give it. That's all that he said, by the way, in the verse. He was like, here are all these siddhis. By the way, if you really thought they were bad, why would he spend the entire 3rd chapter telling you how to get certain siddhis? Here's how you talk to animals. Here's how you know, like, he gives you all these siddhis and tells you how to get them. And then he warns you though. As a Naga, as a Nagini, he'll say, but if you want God, that's beyond my pay grade. I don't give you God, I give you power. And then if you make power into God, as Shaktas tend to do, then the line between health, energy, beauty, the line between logic and grammar, the line between magic and realization is very blurry. So is it possible to be a sorcerer who is beautiful and healthy and strong, but also ignorant of God? Absolutely. Is it possible to be a realizer of God who isn't powerful? No. You can't realize God and not have siddhis. It's impossible. The only question is what you will do with those siddhis. And oftentimes, if you realize God, why would you use your siddhis? And if you do, it's only out of like a bodhisattva compassion to help others, also maybe inspire them like Jesus. But often people who know God don't make a big deal of their siddhis, and when they show their siddhis, often it's kind of like to show you how stupid they are, how like normal they are. They're not magical to these beings. Just like gunpowder and guns would have been magical to someone who didn't know that science, just like that, there are powers and abilities that Swami Vivekananda says are quite natural. They're not supernatural. They're natural. Just like gunpowder is natural. But they're beautiful. And because nature is beautiful. All of nature is beautiful. And like William James said, we shouldn't close our accounts with reality because we've only experienced such a little bit of it in the practical, rational mind. So the stupid mind, the dull mind, the unawakened mind will look at what it doesn't understand and call it superstition. In their fear of the unknown, they will repress it, they will push it away, or they will try to kill it altogether. They will outright try to do away with that which they're scared of. In one form, this looks like sending Romanis and gay people and Jewish people off to be incinerated. In another form, this looks like just pretending that there's no magic, that there's no mystery and beauty in this world. Just like resisting the subconscious mind by using science and practicality and rationality in the wrong way of closing yourself off from it. Who's to say it's the wrong way? It's a strategy, but we're going to argue today that there's a better strategy. I'm going to present it now. When you study Abhinavagupta, when you study Patañjali, when you study any of these Nāgas and Nāginis who have taken incarnation in physical form, who have taught as human teachers in history, whose works survive, that's one way to honor the Nāgas. You know, it's called the 5 sacrifices to the rishis, to the pitris, to the bhutas, you know, to, like, there's like these Vedic ideas that you owe 5 things to 5 groups of beings. The way to honor your debt to the rishis is just by studying the works of the rishis. Those who study the Vedas and the Upanishads are honoring the rishis. They'll be happy, as it were, to see you studying the thing that they gave. So if you study Patañjali, if you really study the Yoga Sutra, if you really study grammar in any capacity, I'm thinking Bhatrahari, I'm thinking Panini, that's also one way to propitiate the Nāgas, you know. That might be it. That might be the extent of your Nāga puja. Another thing you can do is to be kind to snakes. So if you have a snake pet, that's wonderful. But also you might think, snake ownership, why would I want to take a snake and put it inside a cage for my pleasure? That's no better than the demiurge, by the way, keeping Adam and Eve like pets in a garden. I'm kind of against pet ownership, honestly. Like, the way we own dogs is very different. We don't own dogs, we just live in the smashan where the dogs also live, and the dogs eat the food that we offer to the dogs so they stick around, but at no point are we like, you're my dog. We would never say that. We would never claim ownership of any animal. My God, we are animals ourselves. We don't want anybody to own us. How then can we own a dog? The dog just follows the Bhairava around. The Bhairava does not have a pet dog. Ugh, pet ownership is disgusting to me. I mean, don't be offended. I'm sure you have pets, and I'm sure they're doing a lot of emotional labor for you. I'm sure you like project all of your human emotions onto the dog to get yourself to think that you are a lovable person. I'm sure you think your dog really loves you. I'm sure the dog does. Just stop feeding it for a few days and see what happens. Ugh. Anyway, I don't like what people do to animals because they're doing to animals what other people do to them. Possessing them, owning them, castrating them. My God, if you castrate dogs, just you wait. Your karma will be to be castrated, and that's exactly what's happened to you in society. You're all castrated by your hang-ups around sexuality. So I don't like to own animals. A frog I owned for a little while. I liked that frog. We gave it like a nice, it was Vijaya's frog really, but he was helpful. I liked having him. So like familiars, like dogs or cats, don't have to be pets, by the way. But even if they are pets, that's okay. If you love an animal, you'll want to give it its maximal freedom. And so I don't know about whether or not you should own snakes, but I definitely know this. If you are kind to snakes, if you feed snakes, if you propitiate snakes, if every time you see a snake, you say the mantra that I'll share with you in a bit, if every time you like see a snake, you give it some food or something, party time. To be kind to snakes, just like to be kind to dogs, just like to be kind to the insane, is one way to propitiate the deities whose symbols are these things. Sister Nivedita, when she was writing about Kali, said something very significant. She said, the one who has won Kali's grace will be beloved by the insane. They will never have any problems with the insane. Also, you'll notice, the unhoused people, they tend to recognize people with Shivatwa, and they come to people with Shivatwa for cigarettes and for help. And they might even help you. So someone who might scream at you on the street will not scream at the person who has Shivatwa or who has the blessing of Kali. Similarly, a snake will it's very unlikely, again, take this with a grain of salt, it's very unlikely that a snake would bite or harm someone who is beloved of the Nāgas and Nāginis. If you have Sarpa dosha, though, that will complicate your relationship with snakes. You'll be scared when you see one, and then they might bite you. Fear is the precursor to violence and aggression. So we say the best thing to do then, I don't know about owning snakes, but I'm sure you can experiment with this, having a snake pet and being really kind to that snake, giving it maximal freedom. And they don't really need that much. They don't need to roam about. Sometimes it's enough to have a nice tank where the temperature is sorted and where they have all their places to hide, and then you give them regular food every day, maybe even give them live mice so they can practice hunting. Like, if you give the snake its most wild, most natural setting, I don't see why you can't own it as a pet. But the way pet ownership typically works is it's just abuse. Most pet ownership is an abuse of an animal because you're forcing the animal to perform an emotional labor for your delight. That's no better than God in the Garden of Eden, who keeps an animal in this state of just perpetually entertaining it and like performing for it and making it feel like a loving, caring person. So having said that, I don't know about owning snakes, but definitely snakes live in the world, and you don't even need to encounter one. All we have to do, we say in the tradition, is put out some hard-boiled eggs and some bowls of milk. Now, do snakes actually drink milk? will they actually eat the hard-boiled eggs? I don't know. Maybe it makes more sense to put out a mouse or something, like a dead mouse for the snake to come and eat. But you know what we say? It's not the snake that we're propitiating. It's the Naga, the dragon, which can be a crocodile, it can be Leviathan, it can be the Kraken, like it could be a squid in your imagination. It doesn't matter. It's energy. It's like I was saying earlier, it's not until later that we depict things iconographically. Prior to that, Vedics have always understood that energies are not seen the way we see things in this world. They're felt and interacted with in a much subtler way. That's why if you are lucky enough to go to Naga Loka, you might not even see water imagery. You might. That realm can be very watery, but it's more likely to be like light, and it's more likely to be pure voices, because it's going to be above the Manipura chakra, so likely it's going to be beyond sight. It's going to be touch. You might feel something in the Anahata chakra, or you might hear something in the Vishuddha, or you might quote unquote see something in the Agya, but it's very different from seeing something in the Manipura, which is a physical perception of light as you understand it in this realm. So it's not really about snakes. You know, Bhairav is not really about dogs, but feeding dogs is a good way to win his heart. So similarly, it doesn't matter, I think, whether or not you actually feed the snake. That's beside the point. I don't care whether or not snakes eat hard-boiled eggs or whether or not they drink milk. Our tradition declares, and if you take this seriously, it declares that that's the way to propitiate Nagas. So tonight, if you want, get a bowl of milk and put it out. Boil some eggs and put it out. That's why when we go to that temple, my grandfather's Naga temple, it is like going to hell because the whole thing smells like sulfur, rotten eggs. Because they put out all these eggs. They put eggs out every single day, but the snakes don't eat the eggs. And they put out bowls of milk every day, and the milk sours, and the eggs become rotten, and you step into this like hellish realm of sulfur and spoiled milk. I think it's part of the bhav. So maybe they like that. Maybe they like the smell of sulfur. I don't know. I was in Rotorua in New Zealand, and I was hanging out with some Maoris who showed me their like sacred places, and they took me to a place where there's all these like mud pools, and they're hot, bubbling, like sulfuric mud pools, and they have healing properties, like in Ganesh Puri. In Ganesh Puri, there are these like holes in the ground, like snakes love holes, and when you go into the water of that hole, it's usually like a mud bath, it cures you of your illnesses. So to me, what the Maoris were talking about, and they used a lot of serpent imagery too, was the blessing of the Nagas. They created these pools, holes, that if you go into them, you heal, but they smell like hell, sulfur, at least hell in the Western imagination of the word. I don't know if the sulfur thing comes from like a Greek idea or where that sulfur idea came from, but I think it's special because the snake temple does smell like that. So if you go outside tonight and you leave an egg or a bowl of milk under a tree, that will also be the way to propitiate Nagas and Naginis. Another way to propitiate Nagas and Naginis is just to worship Shiva and Ma. This is perhaps the best thing to do, because if you look at Ayurvedic manuals on psychiatry, usually like the one I was talking about I think last week, the last verse after giving you all these cures for all these different Vetalas and Pishachas and Pisachinis, the last thing is just Shiva Bhajet, just worship Shiva. He who worships Shiva will always be safe with ghosts. And I think the same is true with snakes. He who worships Shiva will have nothing to fear from spiders, scorpions, snakes, or ghosts. Why should he fear those things that are totems and symbols of Shiva? A dog will never bite you if Bhairava loves you. A snake will never bite you if Bhairava loves you. They are those beings who are friends of snakes and who are wearing snakes as their upanaya, upavitta, you know. They say Shiva and Kali. If you look at Bhairavashtakam, Shankara or Ravana there says that he's wearing an upavitta, a Brahmin sacred thread made of a serpent. So serpents are very fond of Shiva, and Shiva is very fond of serpents, and therefore you can just skip steps. You can go straight to Kali, you can go straight to Shiva, the highest level of the subconscious mind, and then everything that's associated to them, including the Nagas in Nagaloka, they will be kind to you, and they might come and teach you things. So Nagaloka is underwater because it's in the subconscious mind. Therefore, to visit Nagaloka is an astral project. It's a dream project. But to interact with the dream world, you can do it through the physical world by interacting with the world archetypically and symbolically. A snake is not a snake. It doesn't matter whether or not snake eats egg or eats milk. You're thinking of egg and milk as a symbol, not as actual material. And you're looking at the snake also as a symbol. You look at birds differently and snakes differently. You look at people differently. What color clothes do they regularly wear? What kind of facial features do they have? What animal spirit are you getting from that person? More or less, you can immediately tell when someone has a Nagini or a Naga with them. You can immediately tell when they have like certain bhutas. But you have to be able to see in this way, to see astrally, to see, in other words, symbolically. archetypically, poetically, imaginatively. The world for a sadhu is not a world of things, it's a world of symbols, and therefore they understand relationships in a deeper way than our materialist reductionist scientists, who are only dealing with the brute natural appearance and not the nature that is beyond nature, not the magic and poetry and symbol that is beyond the physical representation. A word is not a word has meaning. Shabda has artha. Similarly, an object is a word. Pashanti means to see, but seeing is a kind of language. I'm looking at a drum, I'm not seeing a drum, I'm seeing that which the drum represents. That's how you read the world. You read omens and you read symbols. Okay, so that's one way, but now let's go direct to the Nagas. Let's go to Nagaloka. In one sense, you can interact with the Nagas through physical snakes, or you can wear snake symbols. You can have symbols of snakes in your house.
Planet associated with Rahu Ketu.
Rahu Ketu, yeah. Like the dragon decapitated the dragon, so that's why I think a lot of people are afraid of Nagaloka, because it's very Rahu and Ketu coded, which shouldn't be a problem for most of the people here, because the fact that you're here means you're friends of Rahu and Rahu and Ketu are your friends. Some of you are even Chinnamastaka upasaks. Those who worship Chinnamastaka, she's Rahu Ketu par excellence. The head is Rahu, the rest of the body is Ketu, and she's spurting blood, and oh my god, they say Chinnamastaka is dangerous, and her Sahasranam starts with Chanda, Prachanda, Ghora, Praghora. People think, oh, she's so kind, she's so compassionate. Yes, if you're the kind of person that's good with Rahu and Ketu. Most people aren't, and they're scared of Rahu and Ketu. So if you're attracted to Chinnamastaka, if you're not afraid of Chinnamastaka, if you love Chinnamastaka, good. You'll probably be fine with the Nagas and Naganis too. So Nagaloka is an actual realm, and it might look like an underwater realm or it might not. These beings might look like crocodiles or serpents, or they might not. They might just be light or voices. How to go there? This is an interesting question. You have to be kind of lucid in your dreams. I suppose so you have to be able to be, like, in your dreams somewhat able to move around. So if in your dreams you have a car or you have an elevator, some symbol in your dream that can help you move, then you just intend before you go to bed to go to Nagaloka, and in your dream you might step into the car or into the elevator and it will take you to Nagaloka, and then there you might learn things. And when you wake up, you might have that knowledge, but in a subliminal, subconscious way. So you might not even remember upon waking up what the Nagas told you. And she says I speak in partial tongue. I don't remember that at all, because I was in trance. And so, I don't even know what I'm saying to the Nagas, and I can hear what the Nagas are saying to me, and I'm hearing them in my language. But apparently, I'm hissing and whatnot. Maybe you in the dream will speak, or you will hear, or maybe it's just a transmission wordlessly. Whatever the case may be. To go to Nagaloka is to be proficient in dreams and to be proficient in trance. And one way to access that frequency is through the use of a certain mantra. So, the mantra is as follows. Now there are these lords of the Nagaloka. There are 9 of them. These 9 snake lords. They appear in the Puranas. In the Bhagavatam, you meet some of them. In the Mahabharata, of course, there are some of them. You can Google each of these names and you'll see the stories associated with them. That's less interesting to me, because these beings are far more than just the stories about them. And often these stories are mixed up. So I don't worry so much about the names here. It's more interesting what order the names appear, and it's more interesting about the energies that these names evoke. So the mantra is Anantam. We start with Anantam Vasukim Shesham Padmanabham cha Campbellian. These are just names. Anantam is a snake. Ananta is the serpent couch that incarnates as Patañjali. Vasuki is also a snake that wraps around Shiva's neck. So Shesha, Ananta Vasukim Shesham, these snakes. Padmanabha is another snake. Campbellian is also another snake. So Anantam Vasukim Shesham, Padmanabham cha Campbellian. Shankapalam, Vrtta Rashtram, cha Takshakam Kaliyam Tatha. These are the names of the 9 serpents. The next part of the mantra says, Etani Nava Namani Naganam cha Mahatmanaha. This is like a Pranamaha mantra. Here are the 9 names of the snake lords. They are great souls. Cha Mahatmanaha. Don't you think the snakes will like you if in your mantra you're saying they're great? So you're already saying, oh snake lords. Once you say their names, they take interest in you. Like when you're at a party, everyone's making noise, but then someone says your name. Someone says, Patrick, and immediately you hear that. Isn't that weird? Because your name is a mantra. The mantra is associated to you. So if someone knows your name, they know the mantra by which they can get your attention. It works for you at a party. Don't you think it will work for the Nagas in the party, the Mela that is this universe? If you say their name, and I just said all their 9 names, they immediately turn and they're like, what? They become attentive to you. Now, the first thing you have to do once you get their attention is propitiate, to say, oh dragon, oh Leviathan, oh Vrtta, oh serpent, oh dark abysmal chaos spirit. You're awesome, bro. You're awesome, sis. I love you. immediately they'll be like, okay, cool. This is not a knight come to kill me to rescue some fiction of a princess. This is someone who has come to talk to me. So Tiamat, you can talk to her. She's not dead. So then you say these names. Then they look at you. You called all 9 of them. Once you call the 9 Naga lords, you also call all their like lineages and all their families. So you reach out to the chieftain. That's why when I'm doing Pitri work for people, I often ask if they have in their lineage some patriarch that like I can appeal to instead. Instead of your father or your grandfather, tell me who your family regards as like a patriarch or a matriarch. I'll just go straight to them. That's tantric logic. If I can go to the chieftain or the ruler of the tribe, I can influence everything that happens on lower levels of that hierarchy. So these are the 9 lords of the snakes. So you go straight to all of them and you say, Etani nava namani naganam cha mahatmanaha sayankale pate nityam prata kale visheshataha. If you want, you can drop this last part. Tasya vishabhayam nasti sarvatra vijayi bhavet. I wouldn't though, because although it sounds like a falashruti, it has mantric significance. So I would chant this whole mantra. Anantam Vasukim Sesham Padmanabham cha Campbellian Shankapalam Dhritarashtram cha Takshakam Kaliyam Datha Etani Nava Namani Naganam cha Mahatmanaha Sayankale Pate Nityam Pratakale Visheshataha Tasya Vishabhayam Nasti Sarvatra Vijayi Bhavet. And I'll of course put it in the chat and put it in the description. It's a Nama mantra. It doesn't necessarily have any bijas, like obviously it doesn't have like clear bijas, but the bijas are buried in the mantras, and you'll see there's a lot of na, na, na. So some people often give the bija for the Nagas as nam or na. So it sounds with a lot of na. That's a very Naga kind of thing. Like Nietzsche almost. You could say the na is important here. So if you have nas or sas in your name, that's already immediately like you have a resonance with the Nagas. Because sa, the sa mantra, that sibilants are usually associated with Naga. So sa, sha, sa. Like sa, these are all like kind of Naga related. So exactly. So sibilants are a good symbol for Nagas, and na, that is also a good symbol. But please be careful. Vrtta means dynamism, and dynamism can mean to invert or to oppose. So just like Lucifer, the Nagas can also create a kind of sovereignty and a rebellion within you. Like the dragons are rebellious by nature. They rule nature, so they might cause you to be more natural. And as a result of your naturalness, you might get a lot of opposition and backlash, which you will unfortunately like or want to fight against, because your nature is Vrtta, dynamism and opposition. So these names have a lot of nas and a lot of shas. So the bija mantras here could be shang or nang. Yeah, but it's not important. You don't need a bija mantra if it's already embedded in the text. Sayankale pate nityam pratakale visheshataha tasya vishabhayam nasti sarvatra vijayi bhavet. So this mantra means Ananta, Vasuki, Shesha, Padmanabha, Kambala, Shankapala, Dhritarashtra, Takshaka, Kaliya. These are the 9 great serpents. You invoke them by calling their names. Once you have a thing's name, you have its address, and you can get its attention. These are the 9 great serpents. I bow to them all. And then it says, if this mantra is recited always, especially in the morning and in the evening, all poisons and fear will be destroyed, and one becomes victorious everywhere. I've realized, like, having done this mantra for a while, I don't have hangovers anymore, or I don't get like backlash from substances or from food. And I think that's maybe the mantra. I don't know. There's so many factors. Sadhana is so rich and filled with things. But there's like a sense that I get that the Nagas are so kind as to give me the best of the substances and not the worst. And that's what the mantra says. All substances are poisons. And food can be a poison. But it protects you from poison. And it allows you to be victorious everywhere. But also, you will be free of all fear. And you could say the real poison, the real thing that harms you is cortisol maybe. Or like stress. The fear of snakes is the poison of the snake, not the snake's actual poison. Because by the way, the thing that cures the snake bite is also the snake poison. You get a serum for the poison of the snake through the poison of the snake. Isn't that a really interesting idea? That the cure is the poison. It's all in dose, and it's all in how you apply it. It's all psychical, it's all magical. The substance is only an afterthought. So Nagas are not really snakes. They're dragons. And dragons are not really serpents with wings that fly, although they can be. They are often associated to waters, to rivers. Rivers are like dragons. So propitiating the Ganga is very important. And the crocodile and the Ganga, they're both symbols for what I've been talking about thus far. So here's the mantra. You set your own sadhana. You decide what kind of purusharana you want. And it all depends on what you're trying to get. So if you really want some big thing, you probably want to do like a serious recitation of this. And I've given hours and hours and hours, years of my life to this mantra, and it's served me so well. So it's with great joy that I share with you this Navanaga mantra, the 9 serpent mantra. Of course, there's another way. You can just say Om Nageshwaraya Namaha or Om Nageshwarye Namaha. That's also fine. And I was going to close with some Kundalini, just a little conversation around Kundalini. But I think that's for another evening. I'm kind of satisfied with all of this. And what's more, I think I want to go pee. So I'm going to go pee. I'm going to go piss now. Sanatri, can you take this here for a while? Like, everyone, you can just ask some questions, talk for a little bit. I'm just going to go pee. I'm going to come back. And then let's talk about what we've discussed so far and open for questions and answers. I'm afraid if I go into the Kundalini stuff and I start talking about Kubjika or Kutila Devi, whose name is the coiled one, it'll take us into deep tantric territory where we'll start discussing Vimarsha, Shakti, the appearance of Shakti as all things, and one's Kula Kundalini, one's personal Shakti, which is in the form of the Kundalini, which will naturally be propitiated and awakened through any sadhana whatsoever. So what I've done is suggest a specific sadhana with some conversation around serpents. And we could talk about Kundalini, but I think I want to close with Tiamat, because Kundalini might take another hour, 30 minutes, and I'm not going to go there. So let's come to Tiamat. Tiamat, like Apophis, like Apep, like Typhon, is a symbol in the Babylonian or Mesopotamian world for chaos. The Olympians stole from the Titans. I'm Team Titan, by the way. I'm a teen Titan, Beast Boy, I guess, and I'm on Team Titan. So I think it was wrong of Zeus to do what he did, to kill Kronos. And why did he do it? He killed time in order to create order, structure, law. The Olympians are kind of like tyrants. I don't care much for Olympians. I would kill them all. If I could, I would march into Olympus and castrate Zeus. That's what I did to Brahma. It's important to remember, gods are not gods to us because they are energies of civilization and they have their place, of course. But Kronos is Kali. Kronos is time. And Kali, Bhairava is time. And Sri Krishna is an incarnation of that too. That's why he says in chapter 11, because of the 11 Rudras, he says, I've become death. Kalosmi. I am death, destroyer of worlds. And some of us are just aligned that way. So we are Team Kronos, if you will. And similarly, we are Team Tiamat. So what Zeus does to Kronos, what Indra did to Vrtta, Marduk thinks he did to Tiamat. So Tiamat is the feminine spirit par excellence. I would point you to my lecture, What is a Woman? There we talked about femininity a lot and associated to the dragon, to the subconscious mind. And that's why dragon riders, like in Game of Thrones or in Aragon or in How to Train Your Dragon, they're like beings who have not conquered, but befriended and allied themselves with their femininity, with their anima, if you will. So Tiamat is the anima par excellence. She's the Jagat Kundalini, the Kundalini of the world. And not only of this world, of all the worlds and all the multiverses, she is the dragon, primordial dragon. And we each have Kundalini, each and every one of us in our body, because the microcosm is the macrocosm. So what Tiamat is to the world, Kundalini is to the body. What does Marduk do? He recognizes her as a threat because of her unpredictable dynamism and because of her infinite primordial chaotic potential. And he goes and he fights her. It's a long fight, taking aeons. And he succeeds through guile and deceit. And eventually he tricks her, and then he doesn't just kill her. This is important. He dismembers her, cuts her up. And once you do that, you stop experiencing the world as a whole. You start to see yourself as separate from plants and herbs, and they stop speaking to you. You see yourself as separate from minerals. So what does it feel to be a body? You ask me, how does it feel to be a serpent? And it feels exactly like this. We have limbs, but the serpent also feels itself to have limbs. Now the question is, what are your limbs? Your angas. If you look at the tantric cosmology, we say the heart is a limb, the head is a limb, the shika is a limb, the kavacha is a limb, and the 3 eyes are a limb. To describe eyes as a limb is mysterious. Limbs are usually the things that project outward from the body. But we say limbs are the dynamic power of embodiment. And if you feel yourself to be embodied as all of this, drishyam shariram, if you have an actual embodied sense of your non-dual reality, that's what it means to be Tiamat. She is time, she's reality. And just like Zeus castrates Kronos, just like that Marduk chops up Tiamat. This is exactly what happens in Africa when the British, through Sykes-Picot Agreement, carve it up. It's exactly what happened in India, where someone in the UK looks at a map and just says, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Like, when you cut up the land and say, this land belongs to this person and that land belongs to that person, if you say, I'm a Kshatriya and you're a Shudra, cut it up like that, you forget the Purusha Sutkam, because there it says, Rahu Ketu, they're only problematic because you're decapitated. But you must put the head of Ganesh back on the decapitated body. You must bring Rahu and Ketu together, and the dragon becomes whole. It becomes a circle. So the breaking of the circle is the problem. And the Ouroboros, which eats its own tail, is that Yggdrasil. She is the ultimate symbol of wholeness and unity and non-duality. But that's terrifying to people. The reason we say my tribe and you are a different tribe, now, later, then, the reason we have these divisions in time and in space and in object is because we're trying to protect ourselves. Vikalpa, differential thought, is a tool that we use to make sense of an energetic landscape that's too much for us. As you grow in power, you also grow in your capacity to hold this energetic maelstrom of possibility. You become mercurial in that you become flexible. Different circumstances don't scare you quite as much. Different states of mind and different states of the body don't scare you. So you open yourself up to possession, therefore you possess more of the world. So what Marduk does is what the conscious, logical, rational mind does every single moment of the day. Marduk is not a mythological figure from the past who killed the dragon one time. Marduk is the power of your conscious mind to in each and every moment wage war against the dark subconscious realm of chaos. And every time Marduk fights Tiamat, he kills her by cutting her up. But the thing about Tiamat is you can cut a worm as much as you want, it'll still be alive. She's the worm, W-Y-R-M. She's the iconic beast par excellence. You can wage your war, you can carve up the land, but the land doesn't care about the map. The map is in the mind. These concepts are superimposed on reality, and it's an artificial cutting. So the way to win as Tiamat, and we are of course Team Tiamat, is to defeat Marduk. And the way to defeat Marduk is to tell him, cut all you want. I don't accept your divisions. I don't accept your time, or your space, or your form. In truth, I am the one, the dragon, embodied in all things as all things. And I am not at war with my animality. I'm not at war with my divine nature. In fact, the divine and the animal I see as one. The human is a wonderful chance to bring the head and the tail together. The separation of head and tail is the most horrific experience of being human. The civilizational project cut off from God and cut off from nature is where we suffer the most. And the goal of sadhana is not to go to God and leave nature behind. The goal of sadhana is to bring God and nature together. Transcendence and immanence. As Vivekananda said, we worship a transcendent, immanent God. So for the sake of seeing God in all things as all things, awaken the dragon, befriend the dragon, become the dragon. May this be an offering to that snake, that dragon, that leviathan, that chaotic demiurge that they call Apep or Typhon. May it be an offering to all of my Nagas and to my Nagini and to my grandfather who gave his life, and my great grandfather who also literally gave his life to the Nagas. Om, may I do justice to the Nagas by being lawless in each and every moment. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Nageshwararpanam Astu. Nageshwararpanam Astu. Jarma. Alright.